Hey friends, welcome to the Horror Sleep. Almost 90% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you enjoy these true park ranger horror stories, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps the channel. Oh, and where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments. The day I found the rope, I had been working as a park ranger at Pictured Rocks for exactly 6 days. During that time, I learned the trails and the shoreline. I tried to understand the rhythm of Lake Superior. For 6 days, I thought I knew what I had stumbled upon. The job promotional video showed crystal clear waters, sandstone cliffs turning orange at sunset, and people walking through untouched forests. No one mentioned what the lake looked like when the fog rolled in. No one warned me about the things you might encounter at dawn. My name is Colt Rennick, and everything changed that morning. I was doing my first solo patrol of the dock area, the wooden walkway that stretched out into the lake like a finger pointing at nothing. The fog was dense that morning, the kind that muffles sound and plays tricks on your eyes. My boots echoed on the wet planks, the only noise in a world that seemed to have gone silent overnight. That's when I saw it. Or rather, didn't see it. The rope was there, tied to the cleat at the end of the dock, pulled taut like something was still attached to it. But when I followed the line out into the fog, it just disappeared into the gray. No boat, just rope, stretched tight over the water, leading to absolutely nothing. I stood there for a moment, my breath forming clouds in the cold air, trying to make sense of it. The rope was thick, weathered, the kind used to secure heavy boats. It was pulled so tight that water dripped from it in steady drops, hitting the lake surface below with soft, plinking sounds that echoed in the stillness. I grabbed my radio. "Unit 3 to base. You there, Walt?" Static crackled, then Walt Reamer's gravelly voice came through. Walt had been a ranger here for 23 years, knew every inch of this coastline, every mooring spot, every boat that came and went. If anyone would know about this, it was him. "Go ahead, Colt. I'm at the south dock. There's a rope here, tied off and pulled tight, but there's no boat attached to it. You know anything about this?" A pause, longer than I expected. "I'll be there in 10, Walt said. He showed up in 8, his Green Ranger truck pulling up to the access road. Walt was a big man, 60s, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen things. He walked with the deliberate pace of someone who'd learned not to rush, carrying a thermos of coffee that seemed permanently attached to his left hand. "Show me," he said. We walked down the dock together, our boots hitting the planks in alternating rhythm. The fog had gotten thicker, if that was possible. You couldn't see more than 20 feet in any direction. The rope was still there, still taut, still leading to nothing. Walt stopped at the cleat, stared at the rope for a long moment. "Huh," he said. "What?" "I saw this boat last night. Did my evening patrol around 10. It was here, tied up proper. A small fishing boat, aluminum, maybe 16 feet. Nobody on it." "You recognize it?" "Nope. Figured it was someone camping overnight. We get that sometimes. Boaters who want to sleep on the water." He crouched down, touched the rope. "Odd thing is, I remember thinking the rope looked new. This one's old." I looked at the rope again. He was right. The fibers were frayed, weathered, grayed by sun and water. This rope had been out here for years, not hours. "Maybe you saw a different boat," I suggested. "At this cleat? Colt, there's only one cleat at the end of this dock. I remember because I specifically checked it. The boat was right here." He straightened up, looked out into the fog. "Right here." We stood there in silence, the fog pressing in around us, the rope dripping steadily into the lake below. Then Walt did something that made my skin prickle. He reached down and grabbed the rope, started pulling it in hand over hand, hauling up whatever was at the end. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Seeing what's on the other end." Hand over hand, he pulled. The rope was heavy, resisting, water streaming off it. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30. He coiled it on the dock, the wet pile growing. 40 feet, 50. Then the rope went slack. Not slowly, not gradually. Just slack, like whatever had been holding tension on the other end had let go all at once. Walt nearly fell backward from the sudden release. The rope went limp in his hands, water dripping from it, no resistance at all. "Jesus," Walt muttered. We both stared at the rope pile. Walt picked up the end, examined it. It wasn't cut, it wasn't frayed any more than the rest of it. It was just ended. Clean edge, like it had been burned through, but there was no soot, no melting. "Let me try something," I said. I leaned over the dock edge, looked down at the water. The fog was thick, but I could see the lake surface maybe 10 feet below. Dark water, almost black in the gray light. Still as glass. Then I saw it. In the reflection on the water's surface, clear as day, there was a boat. Small, aluminum, maybe 16 feet long, tied to this dock, exactly where Walt said it had been. I could see the rope leading from the cleat down to it, could see the way the boat sat in the water, the slight tilt to one side. I blinked, looked directly at the water where the reflection showed the boat. Nothing there, just dark water and fog. Looked at the reflection again. The boat was there. "Walt," I said quietly, "look at the water. Don't look at the water directly. Look at its reflection on the surface." Walt leaned over next to me. I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Do you see it?" I asked. "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, I see it." We stood there, two grown men, staring at a reflection of a boat that wasn't there. In the reflection I could see details. The boat's hull was scratched, dented. There was something written on the side, but I couldn't quite make out the letters. The rope was visible too, running from our dock down to the boat's bow cleat. "Touch the rope," Walt said. "The wet part. Tell me what you feel." I reached down, grabbed the section of rope that had been in the water. The outside was wet, cold, slick, normal. But when I squeezed it, I felt something else. The core of the rope was cold. Not just cold, ice cold. The kind of cold that burns your fingers. And it was dry, not damp, not moist. Bone dry. "Outside's wet, inside's dry," I said. "And cold," Walt added. "That's not right, Colt. That's not right at all." The fog shifted, a rare breeze moving across the lake. For just a moment, visibility improved, and I could see maybe 40 feet out. The rope, the physical rope, hung down into the water at a steep angle, disappearing beneath the surface about 10 feet from the dock. But in the reflection, the rope ran horizontal, taut, to the boat that shouldn't be there. "We need to call this in," I said. "Call what in?" Walt asked. "We gonna tell them we found a boat that doesn't exist except in reflections? That we pulled up a rope that's wet on the outside and dry on the inside?" He had a point. What exactly would we report? Walt straightened up, looked back down the dock toward shore. "I've worked here 23 years, he said. "Seen a lot of strange things on this lake. Fog can play tricks. Water can play tricks, but I've never seen anything like this. What do? We document it, take photos, measure the rope, check the records for any boats reported missing from this dock." He paused. "And we come back tonight." "Tonight?" "I saw that boat at 10 p.m. If it was here then, maybe it'll be here then. Maybe whatever's happening only happens at certain times." The thought of coming back here at night made my stomach tighten. But Walt was right. We needed to understand this. "Okay," I said, "tonight." Walt started taking pictures with his phone while I measured the rope. 87 feet of it coiled on the dock. The end was clean, impossibly clean, like it had been cut with something extremely sharp or extremely hot. But there were no tool marks, no burns. When I touched that end, it was ice cold. We searched the rest of the dock area looking for anything else unusual. Nothing. Just the normal wear and tear of a dock that had been here for decades. The wood was solid, the other cleats were empty. The access ramp showed normal use. It was only that one rope, that one spot, where reality seemed to bend. Before we left, I looked at the reflection one more time. The boat was still there, sitting in water that didn't exist, tied to our dock by a rope that led to 2 different places depending on how you looked at it. As we walked back to our trucks, Walt said, "Don't talk about this with anyone else yet, not until we understand more." "Why?" "Because I've seen what happens when people think you're crazy. It doesn't matter if you're telling the truth. It doesn't matter what you saw. They'll just see someone who can't handle the job." He looked at me. "You want to stay a ranger here, you keep your mouth shut about things like this until you've got proof that can't be argued with." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. That afternoon, I couldn't focus on anything else. I was supposed to be checking trail conditions, clearing fallen branches, the normal work of a park ranger. But my mind kept going back to that dock, that rope, that boat that existed in reflection only. I went to the park's main office, found the dock registry records. Every boat that tied up at our docks was supposed to sign in, give their vessel name and registration number, expected departure date. It was a system designed to help us track who was using our facilities and to make sure boats didn't get abandoned. I went through the last month of entries for the South Dock. Plenty of boats had come and gone. Fishing charters, pleasure boats, kayakers, all normal, nothing unusual. Then I started going back further, 6 months, a year, 2 years. 3 years back I found something. An entry dated August 14th, 3 years ago almost to the day. Boat name, The Drift. Registration number listed. Expected departure, August 15th. But there was a notation added later in different handwriting. Boat abandoned. Owner never returned. Removed by Harbor Master October 3rd. I photocopied the page, then went deeper into the archives. Found the incident report filed about the drift. The boat had been found tied to the South Dock. No one on board. No signs of struggle. Owner was listed as Marcus Brennan, address in Marquette. The report noted that all of Brennan's belongings were still in the boat. Wallet, phone, keys, fishing gear. Everything except Marcus Brennan himself. There was a follow-up report from the county sheriff. They'd searched the shoreline, the waters around the dock, the nearby trails. No body was ever found. Marcus Brennan's truck was still in the parking lot. He'd simply vanished. The case had been left open, unsolved. The boat had been impounded, eventually sold at auction. I stared at the reports, my mouth dry. The dates matched. 3 years ago, almost exactly. And the description of the boat. Aluminum, approximately 16 feet long, white with blue trim. The boat in the reflection this morning had been aluminum, approximately 16 feet long. I couldn't make out the colors in the fog, but I'd bet anything it was white with blue trim. I put the files away, tried to steady my breathing. This couldn't be coincidence. The timing, the location, the type of boat, the drift was connected to what we'd seen this morning. It had to be. But that meant the boat in the reflection was a boat that didn't exist anymore. A boat that had been sold, probably repainted, probably sitting in someone's garage or on another lake entirely. Unless what we were seeing wasn't the boat as it was now. Unless it was the boat as it had been. 3 years ago. Still tied to the dock. Still waiting for Marcus Brennan to return. The thought made my hands shake. I spent the rest of the afternoon researching Marcus Brennan. Found his obituary online, declared legally dead 2 years after his disappearance. Found a few news articles about the case. Local man vanishes from popular park. Search continues for missing boater. Mystery remains after year of searching. There was a photo of Marcus. Middle-aged, dark hair, friendly smile. In the picture, he was standing next to his boat, holding up a decent-sized lake trout. The drift was visible behind him. White hull, blue trim, the name clearly visible on the side. I zoomed in on the photo, trying to see details. There were scratches on the hull, dents near the bow. The same scratches and dents I'd seen this morning in the reflection. My phone buzzed. Text from Walt. Meet me at the South Dock at 9:45 p.m. Bring a flashlight and your camera. I looked at the clock. 3:30 p.m. 6 hours until I had to go back there. 6 hours to decide if I was really going to do this. But I already knew the answer. I had to understand. I had to know what was happening at that dock. I spent the evening hours preparing. Checked my flashlight batteries, made sure my phone was fully charged. I brought a notebook, thinking I'd document everything. I also brought something else. A length of rope from the maintenance shed. I wanted to compare it to the rope at the dock. At 9:30 p.m., I drove to the South Dock access Rosos Road. Walt was already there, his truck parked with the lights off. He was sitting on the tailgate, sipping coffee from his thermos, staring at the path that led down to the dock. "You didn't have to come," he said when I walked up. "Yeah, I did." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Find anything interesting today?" I told him about Marcus Brennan, about the drift, about the matching details. Walt listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable in the darkness. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "So you think what we're seeing is that boat? The drift? Still tied here 3 years later?" "I don't know what I think, but the coincidence is too strong." "No such thing as coincidence on this lake," Walt said. "Not when it comes to things like this." "Things like this? You've seen something like this before?" Walt took a long sip of his coffee. "Not exactly like this, but strange things. Things that don't make sense. This lake is old, Colt. Deeper than people realize. And when something stays down there long enough, sometimes it leaves an impression, like a photograph burned into reality." "You think Marcus Brennan is down there, in the lake?" "I think something is down there. Whether it's him or not." Walt shrugged. "That's what we're here to find out." We waited until 10 p.m., the exact time Walt had seen the boat the night before. The temperature had dropped and the fog was back, rolling in off the lake in thick banks. By the time we started walking down to the dock, visibility was less than 15 feet. Our flashlights cut through the fog like laser beams, illuminating the wet planks beneath our feet. The dock seemed longer at night, the walk to the end stretching on forever. Water lapped against the pilings below, a soft, rhythmic sound that was the only noise besides our footsteps. The rope was still there, still tied to the cleat, still pulled taut, leading out into the darkness. Walt checked his watch. "It's 10:03. Last night, it was here at 10. Let me see if—" He leaned over the edge of the dock, shined his flashlight down at the water. I did the same. In the reflection on the water's surface, illuminated by our flashlight beams, was the drift. clearer now than it had been in the morning. I could see every detail, the scratches on the hull, the dents, the name painted on the side in fading blue letters. The boat sat in the reflected water exactly as it must have sat 3 years ago, tied securely to this dock, waiting for an owner who would never return. But here's what made my blood run cold. There was someone in the boat. A figure, sitting in the stern facing away from us. Dark jacket, hood up, completely still. "Walt," I whispered, "do you see?" "I see it." We stood frozen, staring at the reflection. The figure didn't move, didn't turn around, just sat there, motionless, in a boat that didn't exist. "Marcus Brennan?" I asked quietly. "Can't tell. We'd need to see his face." Walt did something then that made my heart jump into my throat. He called out, "Hey, you in the boat! This is Park Ranger Walt Reamer. Please turn around." His voice echoed across the water, loud in the fog-muffled night. For a moment, nothing happened. The figure remained still, then, slowly, it turned around. I didn't get a good look at the face. As soon as it started turning, the reflection rippled, distorted, like someone had thrown a stone into the water even though the lake surface was perfectly calm. The image fragmented, shattered into pieces, and then was gone. We both stared at the water. Normal reflection now. Just darkness and fog and the underside of the dock. "Did you see the face?" I asked. "No." "You?" "No." We stood there for several minutes, waiting to see if the reflection would return. It didn't. The rope remained taut, leading to nothing. The lake was silent except for the gentle lapping of waves. Finally, Walt said, "We need to know what's at the other end of this rope." "We pulled it up this morning. There was nothing." This morning was different. That boat wasn't occupied. Now it is, or was. He looked at me. "We need to go down there." "Down where?" "Into the water. Follow the rope. See where it leads." The thought of getting into that black water, following a rope that connected to something that might or might not be real, made every instinct I had scream no. But Walt was right. If we wanted answers, we had to go to the source. "Not tonight," I said. "Not without proper equipment and daylight." Walt nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, then. We come back with diving gear, underwater lights. We see what's down there." "You have diving certification?" 20 years. "You?" "Got it in college." "Then tomorrow we dive." We took more photos, documented everything we could see. The rope, the cleat, the angle at which the rope entered the water. Walt measured the tension on the rope using a handheld scale. 72 pounds of pull. Something was creating resistance on the other end. Before we left, I tried one more thing. I took the rope I'd brought from the maintenance shed, tied it to a different cleat, dropped the other end into the water near where our mystery rope disappeared. I wanted to compare, to see if a normal rope did anything similar. It didn't. My rope hung limp in the water, no tension, no strange coldness, no impossible reflections, only the original rope connected to something else. We drove back in silence. When we reached the parking lot, Walt turned to me. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow might be a long day." "Walt, what do you really think is happening here?" He looked out at the darkness, toward where the lake stretched away into the night. "I think Marcus Brennan tied his boat to that dock 3 years ago. I think he went into the water and never came back. And I think, somehow, some part of what happened that night is still happening. Still playing out. Caught in a loop or an echo, or whatever you want to call it. But that's not possible." "Says who? You? Me? The physics textbooks?" Walt shook his head. This lake is 400 years old, Colt. 400 years of storms, shipwrecks, drownings, disappearances. You know how many people have died in Superior? Thousands. And they say the lake never gives up her dead. That bodies stay down there, preserved in the cold water, like they're frozen in time. He started his truck. Maybe the drift is like those bodies. Still here, still tied to this dock, still waiting. Just not in the way we usually look for things. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the fog. Then I sat in my own truck for a long time, trying to process everything. Tomorrow we'd dive. Tomorrow we'd follow that rope down into the darkness and see what waited at the other end. Tomorrow I'd learn that some mysteries shouldn't be solved. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure in the boat, turning slowly toward us, its face fragmenting before we could see it clearly. I kept thinking about Marcus Brennan, about what his last moments must have been like. Had he known something was wrong? Had he tried to escape? At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and drove to the ranger station. Walt was already there, sitting in the briefing room with 2 sets of diving equipment laid out on the table. Wetsuits, tanks, regulators, underwater lights, depth gauges, everything we'd need. Couldn't sleep either? I asked. Haven't slept properly in 2 days, Walt admitted. Keep thinking about that boat, about what we saw. You ever dive at this location before? A few times, years back. Bottom drops off fast from the dock. 20 feet down within 50 feet from shore, then it slopes to about 60 feet. After that, it's a cliff, drops straight down to 200 feet. What's down there at 60 feet? Silt, rocks, some old debris from when they built the dock, nothing unusual. He paused. At least, nothing I saw in previous dives. We spent the morning doing equipment checks, going over dive protocols. Walt insisted we use a safety line connecting us together, and that we each carry 2 lights. Visibility is maybe 10 feet on a good day. In that silt, could be less. At 10 a.m., we loaded the gear into Walt's truck and drove to the south dock. The morning was clear, no fog for once. Sunlight sparkled on the lake's surface, making it look deceptively peaceful. The rope was still there, still taut, still leading to nothing visible. In the daylight, it was easy to convince myself last night had been some kind of shared hallucination. Just fog playing tricks, our minds filling in details that weren't there. But when I touched the rope, felt that ice-cold dryness at its core, I knew better. We got suited up on the dock, helped each other with the tanks and regulators. The wetsuits were cold until your body heat warmed them up. Walt attached the safety line between us, 20 feet of bright yellow rope. We go down together, we come up together, he said. If either of us signals abort, we both surface immediately, no arguments. What are we looking for? Whatever's at the end of that rope. Walt checked his depth gauge. We'll follow it down, see where it leads. Take photos if we can, but if anything feels wrong, anything at all, we surface. Understood? Understood. We walked to the end of the dock. The rope disappeared into the water at a steep angle, pointing almost straight down. Walt had marked our entry point with a buoy so we could find our way back easily. Ready? Walt asked. I nodded, put my regulator in my mouth, and stepped off the dock. The cold hit me immediately, even through the wetsuit. Lake Superior never really warms up, even in summer. The water temperature was probably 55 degrees, cold enough to numb exposed skin quickly. I equalized my ears as we descended, following Walt down through layers of blue-green water. Visibility was decent near the surface, maybe 15 feet. I could see Walt ahead of me, the safety line stretching between us, and the rope we were following angling down into the darker water below. At 20 feet, the light started to fade. By 30 feet, we were in a dim twilight, our flashlight beams becoming the primary source of illumination. The rope continued down, unwavering, pointing toward the deeper darkness. 40 feet. The temperature dropped noticeably. My depth gauge showed 42 feet when Walt stopped, hovering in the water. His flashlight pointed down at something. I swam up beside him and looked. The rope didn't end. It didn't connect to a boat or an anchor or anything physical. Instead, it seemed to pass through something. The water below us was different, darker, almost opaque. It wasn't silt or sediment. It was like a boundary, a place where the water simply stopped being normal water and became something else. The rope passed through this boundary and disappeared. Walt looked at me, gave the okay hand signal. I didn't feel okay. Every instinct screamed at me to surface, to get away from whatever that was. But I'd come this far. We needed to understand. I gave him the okay signal back, though my hand shook slightly as I made it. Walt descended toward the boundary slowly, carefully. I followed, my heart hammering despite the regulator's steady breathing rhythm. The boundary looked like oil on water, a shimmering, iridescent surface that didn't reflect light normally. 5 feet from it, Walt stopped again. He reached out carefully, touched it with one gloved hand. His hand passed through. Then something grabbed him. I saw it happen in horrible clarity. One moment Walt was hovering there, his hand extended through the boundary. The next moment he was jerked forward, pulled through that impossible surface like he was being sucked down a drain. The safety line went taut between us, yanking me forward. I grabbed for the dock piling next to me, missed, was pulled downward toward the boundary. My flashlight beam swung wildly, catching glimpses of that dark surface rushing up at me. Then I was through it. The cold I'd felt before was nothing compared to this. This was cold that burned, cold that penetrated straight to your bones, cold that made your muscles seize and your mind scream. The water here was different, thick, resistant. Swimming through it felt like swimming through syrup. My flashlight illuminated murky darkness. I couldn't see Walt. The safety line was still attached to my harness, but it led off into the blackness, taut and vibrating like something was pulling on the other end. I followed it, swimming hard against the resistant water, my light cutting through the gloom. Debris floated around me. Not lake debris. Objects, a shoe, a flashlight, a life jacket, all suspended in the water like they'd been there for years, decades even. Then I saw the boats. They were everywhere. Dozens of them, maybe more, all sitting on what appeared to be a flat, sandy bottom 50 feet below me. Small fishing boats, kayaks, a sailboat, even what looked like an old wooden rowboat. All intact, all positioned upright like they'd been carefully placed there. And they were occupied. In each boat sat a figure. Still, unmoving, facing away from me. Dark clothes, hoods up, exactly like the figure we'd seen in the reflection last night. The safety line led down through this impossible graveyard of boats, straight to where Walt was. I could see him now, maybe 30 feet ahead, struggling against something. His flashlight beam swept back and forth frantically. I swam harder, fighting the thick water, the terrible cold. As I got closer, I saw what had grabbed Walt. It was the rope. The same rope we'd been following. But down here, in this place, it was alive. It had wrapped around Walt's arm, coiling like a snake, pulling him toward one of the boats below. I reached him, grabbed the rope, tried to unwrap it. The moment I touched it, I felt the cold intensify, felt the rope move under my hands like it was made of muscle rather than fiber. It tightened around Walt's arm, and he made a muffled sound of pain through his regulator. I pulled my dive knife, started sawing at the rope. The blade barely cut it. The fibers were tough, resistant, wrong. But I kept sawing, putting all my strength into it, while Walt struggled and the rope tried to pull us both down towards the boat it had selected. The rope parted with a snap I felt more than heard. Walt and I tumbled backward, the sudden release sending us spinning through the thick water. I grabbed his harness, looked at him. His eyes were wide behind his mask, terrified. I pointed up. We needed to surface. We needed to get out of this place. But when I looked up, I couldn't see the boundary. The water above us was the same murky darkness as below. No gradient, no lighter area indicating the surface. We were completely disoriented. Walt grabbed my arm, pointed at his compass. But when we both looked at it, the needle was spinning wildly, unable to find north, unable to find anything. We were lost. I forced myself to think, to remember my training. When you're disoriented underwater, follow your bubbles. They always go up. I exhaled slowly, watched where my bubbles went. They didn't rise. They hung in the water, suspended, slowly drifting in a lazy circle around us. The laws of physics didn't work normally here. That's when panic really started to set in. I could feel it clawing at my chest, making my breathing rapid and shallow. Panic uses air faster. Panic kills divers. I forced myself to slow my breathing, to think. Walt was doing the same. His eyes closed behind his mask, clearly concentrating on controlling his fear. When he opened his eyes again, he tapped his depth gauge, showed it to me. The needle was going backward. We were at 58 feet, 56, 54. According to our gauges, we were ascending, even though we weren't swimming upward and our bubbles weren't rising. Walt grabbed my hand, squeezed it. "Trust the instruments," that squeeze said. "Even when nothing makes sense, trust the instruments." We floated there, holding hands like lost children, watching our depth gauges count down. 50 feet, 45, 40. The murky darkness around us didn't change, didn't lighten, but the gauges kept counting down. 35 feet, 30. At 28 feet, something changed. The water suddenly felt normal again, no longer thick and resistant. I could see light above us, blue-green and beautiful. My bubbles started rising properly, streaming upward toward that light. We were through the boundary, back in normal Lake Superior water. Walt and I looked at each other, and even through his mask I could see his relief. We swam upward together, slowly, properly managing our ascent rate to avoid decompression sickness. The light got brighter. I could see the dock pilings above us, the underside of the dock itself. We surfaced next to the buoy marker, both of us gasping despite having regulators. The normal world greeted us. Sunshine, fresh air, the gentle lapping of waves against the dock. It felt like a miracle. We climbed out of the water onto the dock, helped each other with our tanks. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. We just sat there dripping, shaking from cold and adrenaline and fear. Finally, Walt said, "Did that just happen?" "I think so. The boats, the figures, that place." He looked at me. "That wasn't Lake Superior down there, was it?" "No, it was something else." We stripped off our wetsuits, toweled dry, still not quite able to process what we'd experienced. I looked at Walt's arm where the rope had grabbed him. There were marks on his skin, red welts in a spiral pattern, like rope burn, but deeper. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Burns like hell, but I'll live." He looked at the rope still tied to the cleat. "What is that thing, really?" "I don't know. Some kind of connection point? A doorway?" "To where? Where were we, Colt?" I didn't have an answer. The boats, the figures, the impossible physics. It was like we'd found a pocket dimension, a place that existed alongside the normal lake but separate from it, a place where things that went into the water stayed, suspended in time. "The figures in the boats," Walt said quietly. "Were they alive?" "I don't think so. They looked more like echoes, impressions, like they were part of the boats themselves. Marcus Brennan is down there, in the drift. Probably, along with everyone else who disappeared from this lake over the years." Walt stood up, walked to the rope, looked at it with something like hatred. "We need to cut this thing loose right now, before it takes anyone else." "Wait." I grabbed his arm. "What if cutting it free doesn't stop it? What if there are other connection points, other ropes we don't know about?" Walt paused, considering. "So, what do? We research. We find out if there have been disappearances at other locations. We check other docks, other mooring spots. If there are more of these doorways, we need to find them. And then we figure out how to close them." We spent the rest of the afternoon searching park records for any other unexplained disappearances. We found 3 more cases over the past 15 years. A kayaker who vanished near the North Shore, a swimmer who was seen entering the water but never coming out, a small boat that was found drifting empty, all the occupants' belongings still aboard, all from different locations along the coastline. We drove to each location, checked the waters, the shorelines, the docks. At 2 of the sites, we found nothing unusual, but at the 3rd site, an old maintenance dock that hadn't been used in years, we found another rope. This one wasn't tied to a cleat. It was wrapped around a piling, half submerged in the water, looking for all the world like trash that had washed up and gotten caught. But when I touched it, I felt that same impossible coldness at its core. "How many are there?" Walt wondered. "How many of these connections exist? Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds." I looked out at the vast expanse of Lake Superior. This lake is huge, thousands of miles of shoreline. We could search for years and never find them all. Then what's the alternative? Just leave them? Let them keep taking people? I didn't have a good answer. We were just 2 park rangers. We didn't have the authority, the resources, or the knowledge to deal with something like this. This needed experts, scientists, people who understood things we didn't. But who would believe us? What evidence did we have beyond our own testimony and some photographs that could be explained as fog and reflections? That night, we sat in the ranger station surrounded by our research, trying to decide what to do. Walt had bandaged his arm, but I could see the welts were getting worse, more inflamed. Whatever that rope had done to him, it was more than just physical damage. "We could close the park," Walt suggested. "Tell them there's a safety hazard." "For how long? Forever? And what about the rest of Superior? We can't close the entire lake." Then we warn people. Put up signs. Don't tie boats to these specific locations. And when they ask why, what do we tell them? Walt slumped in his chair. "I don't know. I've been a ranger for 23 years, and I don't know what the hell to do about this." My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Stop looking. Some things should stay buried." I showed it to Walt. His expression darkened. "Who knows what we've been doing? Just us, unless someone's been watching." We both went to the window, looked out at the dark parking lot. Nothing moved, no cars, no people, but I felt watched, observed by something we couldn't see. Another text arrived. "The lake keeps its dead. That's the way it's always been, the way it should be." "Who is this?" I typed back. No response. Walt checked his phone. Nothing. "They only texted you. Why? What makes me different? You're new. You don't have history here. Maybe they think you can still be scared off." "Can I?" Walt looked at me steadily. "I don't know. Can you?" I thought about Marcus Brennan, about the kayaker, the swimmer, all the people who'd disappeared into those impossible spaces beneath the lake. I thought about their families, who probably still wondered what happened, who probably would never have closure. "No," I said, "I can't walk away from this. Then we need a plan, a real plan, not just documenting and hoping someone else solves this." We spent the next hour brainstorming. The rope was the connection point, the doorway. If we could understand how it worked, maybe we could close it, or at least make it inactive. "The rope at the South Dock has been there for 3 years," I said, "since Marcus Brennan disappeared. What if his disappearance created it? What if each rope is created by a death? So they're not doorways that trap people. They're memorials, scars, places where someone died and left a mark on reality. Maybe. And if that's true, cutting the rope might not close the doorway. It might just move it or make it invisible." Walt pulled up his laptop, started searching. There are legends about Superior. Native stories about the lake being a spirit, a living thing. They say it demands sacrifice, that it's hungry. "You think there's something down there? Something intelligent?" "I think there's something that behaves like it's intelligent. Whether it actually is or not." He shrugged. "Does it matter?" Another text. "You can't stop it. You can only join it. The lake always wins." This time, the message felt less like a warning and more like a threat. We didn't get any more texts that night, but sleep was impossible. Walt and I took turns keeping watch from the ranger station, convinced that whoever was sending those messages might try something more direct. But the hours passed quietly, nothing but wind and the distant sound of waves. At dawn, we drove back to the South Dock. The rope was still there, still taut. But something had changed. There were marks on the dock planks now, wet footprints leading from the water's edge to the rope, then back to the water. Human footprints. Bare feet. Small, maybe a woman's or a teenager's. "These weren't here yesterday," Walt said, crouching to examine them. "Someone came out of the water last night. Or something that looked like someone." I followed the footprint trail to the rope. There was a handprint on the cleat, wet and perfect, fingers clearly visible. Whoever or whatever had touched it had been dripping wet. Walt took photos while I checked the surrounding area. No other signs of disturbance. Just those footprints, that handprint, and the rope that continued to point down into the dark water. "I think we need to talk to Marcus Brennan's family," I said. "Find out if anything strange happened before he disappeared." Walt nodded. "I'll make some calls." It took most of the morning, but Walt managed to track down Brennan's brother David, who still lived in Marquette. He agreed to meet us at a coffee shop in town that afternoon. David Brennan was younger than Marcus had been, probably in his early 40s now. He had the same dark hair, the same build. Seeing him was like seeing a ghost of the man in the photos. "I haven't talked about Marcus in a long time," he said after we'd ordered coffee. "Most people have forgotten about him. Just another person who got careless on the lake." "But you don't think that's what happened," Walt said gently. David shook his head. "Marcus knew the lake, respected it. He wouldn't have just fallen in, wouldn't have drowned without a trace." He looked at us. "Why are you asking about this now, after 3 years?" I told him about the rope, about what we'd found. I didn't mention the diving, the impossible space beneath the water, the boats full of still figures. Just the rope, the reflection, the boat that shouldn't be there. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, he called me the night before, around 9 p.m., said he was at the dock, was going to spend the night on the boat, do some early morning fishing. Did he sound unusual? Worried? No, normal, happy even. but he said something strange at the end of the call. David pulled out his phone, scrolled through old messages. He texted me after we hung up, said, "If I don't answer tomorrow, check the rope." "Check the rope?" Walt leaned forward. "Those exact words?" "Yeah." I asked him what he meant, but he didn't respond. I figured it was an autocorrect error or something. Marcus was always doing that, sending weird texts by accident. David's voice cracked slightly. When he didn't answer the next day, I did check. Drove out there. The boat was there, tied up proper. But Marcus was gone, and I remember thinking, there's the rope. He told me to check it. But it was just a normal rope, tied to the cleat like it should be. "Did you touch it?" I asked. "Yeah, I pulled on it, made sure it was secure. Thought maybe Marcus had fallen overboard and the boat had drifted, and the rope was the clue to where he'd gone in. But the boat was right there, exactly where it should be." "Did the rope feel unusual? Cold or dry when it should be wet?" David frowned, thinking. "Actually, yeah, now that you mention it. It was a hot day, mid-August. The boat had been there all night. But that rope was cold, freezing cold. I remember thinking it was weird, but I had bigger things to worry about." Walt and I exchanged glances. Marcus Brennan had known something was wrong, had known to check the rope. But what had he known? And why hadn't he just left? "Did Marcus ever talk about strange experiences on the lake?" Walt asked. "Things he couldn't explain?" "All the time. He loved that stuff. Ghost ships, mysterious lights, the legends." David smiled sadly. Marcus believed the lake was alive. Used to say it had moods, that you could feel it watching you sometimes. I thought he was just being poetic. "Did he ever mention seeing anything specific? A particular location where he felt this more strongly?" "The South Dock, where you found the rope. He said that spot always felt different. Said the water there was deeper than it should be, darker. He'd been fishing from that dock for years, and he always said it felt like fishing at the edge of something." The edge of something. That's exactly what it was. The boundary between normal water and that impossible space where the boats sat waiting. "David," I said carefully, "did Marcus keep a journal? Notes about his fishing trips?" "Yeah, he was meticulous about that. Kept logs of where he fished, what he caught, water conditions, everything." David pulled out his phone again, tapped a few times. "I have them, actually. Scanned them all after he disappeared. Thought maybe there'd be a clue." He sent the files to my phone. Never found anything useful, just fishing data. We thanked David, exchanged contact information, promised to let him know if we learned anything new. As we walked back to Walt's truck, I opened the files David had sent. Marcus Brennan had kept detailed logs going back 5 years. Each entry included date, location, weather conditions, species caught, and a notes section. The entries were methodical, factual, exactly what you'd expect from someone who took their hobby seriously. Until about 6 months before his disappearance. That's when the notes section started including other observations. "Felt watch today. Nobody else on water. Compass acting strange near South Dock. Water looks darker than usual, almost black in places. 3 months before, I saw something under the boat today, big, pale, shaped wrong. When I looked closer, it was gone, 2 months before. The dock rope froze my hand today, even though it's 85 degrees. Something not right. 1 month before, I think there's something in the water. Not an animal. Something else. It watches." The final entry, dated the day before his disappearance. "Tomorrow, I'm going to stay overnight. Need to see what happens after dark. If I'm right about what's down there, someone needs to document it. Check the rope if I don't come back. It's a doorway." "Jesus," Walt whispered, reading over my shoulder. He knew. He knew and he went anyway. He was trying to prove it, to document it. And it killed him. I kept reading. Marcus had attached photos to several entries. Most showed normal fishing scenes, but the later photos showed the rope, close-ups of the cleat, the way the rope entered the water. In one photo, taken at dusk, you could see something in the water beneath the rope, a reflection that didn't match the sky above. He saw it too, I said. The other place. He was documenting it. Walt pulled out his own phone, made a call. Sheriff's Department. This is Ranger Walt Reamer. I need to report new evidence in the Marcus Brennan case. He listened for a moment. Yes, I know it's been closed. I'm telling you there's new evidence. While Walt argued with whoever was on the other end, I kept reading Marcus's final entries. He'd been systematic, almost scientific. He'd measured water temperatures at different depths near the dock, documented times when the rope felt cold, noted patterns in when the strange reflections appeared. He'd figured out that the effect was strongest between 10 p.m. and midnight, that touching the rope while looking at a reflection could cause disorientation, that the water beneath the dock was 10 degrees colder than anywhere else in the area. Marcus Brennan had been conducting an investigation, and his final experiment was staying overnight on his boat, tied to that dock, to see what would happen. Walt finished his call, looking frustrated. They're not interested. Said the case is closed, probable drowning, moving on. He kicked at a rock. We're on our own with this. Maybe that's better. Official involvement means publicity, questions we can't answer, people doing stupid things to see for themselves. So, what do? I looked at the files on my phone, at Marcus Brennan's meticulous research. We finish what he started. We document everything. We figure out how that doorway works, and then we find a way to close it. And if we can't close it, then we make sure nobody else goes through it. We spent the next 2 days gathering equipment. Underwater cameras, temperature sensors, water sampling gear. We weren't going to dive again. Neither of us was eager to return to that impossible space, but we could study the rope, the water around it, the conditions that seemed to trigger the effect. We set up cameras on the dock, pointed at the rope and the water beneath it, programmed to record continuously. Temperature sensors were placed at various depths. We even borrowed some specialized sonar equipment, hoping to map what was beneath the surface. The results were disturbing. The water temperature around the rope was consistently 12 degrees colder than the surrounding lake. The temperature dropped sharply below 40 feet, hitting near freezing at 60 feet, right where we'd encountered the boundary. The sonar returned even stranger data. Most of the time it showed normal lake bottom, rocks, and silt. But between 10 p.m. and midnight, the sonar returns became chaotic. Instead of a solid bottom, it showed open space, a void extending down far deeper than the lake's actual depth. And the cameras captured something we'd missed with our own eyes. In frame-by-frame analysis of the footage, we could see movement in the water beneath the dock during those night hours. Shapes moving in the depths, ascending toward the surface but never breaking through. They'd get close, maybe 5 feet down, then sink back into darkness. It's like they're trying to get out, Walt said, staring at the footage, or luring people in. We noticed something else. The rope moved during those hours. Not dramatically, not enough to see without time-lapse, but it definitely moved. It would tighten slightly, then loosen, then tighten again. A pulsing rhythm, like breathing. It's alive, Walt said. Or the thing on the other end is alive. We were reviewing footage from the previous night when we caught something extraordinary. At 10:47 p.m., a figure walked onto the dock. Human-shaped, but moving strangely, jerkily, like stop-motion animation. It approached the rope, knelt beside it, placed both hands on it. The rope glowed, not bright, not like a light source, but it definitely glowed. A soft, blue-green phosphorescence that spread from where the figure touched it, running down the rope's length into the water. Then the figure stood, turned toward the camera, and we got a good look at its face. It was Marcus Brennan. Except it wasn't, not really. The features were right, the build was right, but something was off. The eyes were too dark, too empty. The movements were mechanical. Wrong. This was Marcus Brennan's shape, but not his substance. The figure looked directly at the camera for 3 seconds. Then it turned and walked off the dock, straight off the end, into the water. It didn't jump, it just walked, kept walking on the surface for 2 steps, 3 steps, and then sank smoothly beneath the lake. Walt and I watched the footage 3 times, neither of us speaking. Finally, I said, "We need to burn that rope. Fire won't work, we're underwater. Then we need to pull it up, all of it, get it on the dock where it can't reach back down. Colt, we tried that. It let go when we pulled, it detached. Because we pulled during the day. Maybe at night, during the active period, it can't attach. Maybe it's committed, connected to whatever's on the other end." Walt thought about this. "That's a big maybe. And if you're wrong, if it grabs us like it grabbed me, we'll be ready this time. Cutting tools, multiple lights, safety harnesses. We pull together, fast before it can react. And if we do get it up, if we manage to haul that thing onto the dock, what then? Then we cut it into pieces and burn them separately. Destroy the connection." We prepared like we were planning a military operation. Purchased heavy-duty cutting tools, industrial gloves, multiple flashlights and headlamps. We set up floodlights on the dock to eliminate shadows. Brought fire extinguishers and a propane torch. I called David Brennan, told him what we were planning. He listened quietly, then said, "Be careful. Marcus thought he could control it, understand it. Look where that got him. We're not trying to understand it, we're trying to destroy it. Good. That thing took my brother. If you can kill it, do it." The night we chose was clear, no fog. We wanted good visibility, no environmental factors that might complicate things. We arrived at the dock at 9:30 p.m., gave ourselves time to set up before the active period began. By 10 p.m., everything was ready. Floodlights illuminated the dock like a stage. Tools were laid out within easy reach. Walt and I both wore harnesses secured to the dock's railing, insurance against being pulled into the water. At 10:15, the temperature dropped. We could see our breath, even though the air temperature was in the 70s. The water around the dock became still, unnaturally so. The gentle lapping of waves ceased entirely. The rope went taut, pulling harder than we'd seen before. Whatever was on the other end, Xian knew we were here, knew what we were planning. "Ready?" Walt asked. "Ready." We grabbed the rope together, started hauling. It was like pulling against a truck. The tension was immense, the rope vibrating in our hands. But we pulled, hand over hand, coiling it on the dock. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30. The rope started to fight back. Not just resistance, but active fighting. It writhed in our hands, tried to slip from our grip. We held on, kept pulling. At 50 feet, something in the water screamed. Not a human scream, not an animal scream, something else. A sound that hurt to hear, that made your teeth ache and your vision blur. The water beneath the dock started to churn, boiling up in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. "Keep pulling," Walt shouted. 60 feet, 70. Shapes appeared in the water. The same shapes we'd seen in the camera footage. Human-shaped, but wrong. All reaching up toward the dock, toward the rope we were pulling from their realm. 80 feet. 90. The rope burned our hands now, even through the gloves. Not hot burned, cold burned. Frost formed on it, spreading up toward our hands. My fingers were going numb. "Almost there!" I yelled. 100 feet, the end had to be close, had to be... Something massive broke the water's surface beneath us. Not human-shaped, large, pale, wrong on a fundamental level. It had too many limbs, too many angles, a geometry that hurt to look at directly. It reached for the rope, for us, with appendages that were not quite tentacles, not quite arms. "Cut it!" Walt screamed. "Cut it now!" I grabbed the bolt cutters we'd prepared, positioned them on the rope. The thing in the water was rising, coming up towards the dock. I squeezed the handles with everything I had. The rope parted with a sound like breaking glass. The thing in the water shrieked again, fell back, disappeared beneath the surface. The water stopped churning. The temperature returned to normal. The shapes we'd seen were gone. We stood there panting, staring at the 2 pieces of rope on the dock. The end we'd cut was already changing, shriveling, turning black like it was rotting at high speed. Within 2 minutes, both pieces had disintegrated entirely, leaving nothing but an oily residue on the dock planks. "Is it over?" Walt asked. I walked to the edge of the dock, looked down at the water. Normal reflection, normal temperature. The cleat where the rope had been tied was empty. No trace that anything had ever been there. "I think so." We stood watch until dawn, but nothing else happened. The water remained calm, normal, just water. Whatever doorway had existed there seemed to be closed. As the sun came up, we gathered our equipment, exhausted but relieved. We'd done it. We'd closed one of the doorways, but we both knew there were others. The rope at the maintenance dock. However many more we hadn't found. This wasn't over, not really. "We need to find them all," Walt said. "I know. Could take years. I know that too." We drove back to the ranger station in silence. When we got there, there was an envelope waiting for me, taped to my truck's windshield. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "You closed one door, but the lake has many doors, and it's still hungry. Some of us feed it willingly. Some of us have been feeding it for decades. You can't stop us all. Friends of the Deep." Walt read the note over my shoulder. "There are others, people who know about these doorways, people who are using them. Using them for what? I don't know, but we need to find out." I thought about Marcus Brennan, about his final experiment, about all the people who disappeared into the lake over the years. How many had gone willingly, knowing what they'd find? How many had been fed to these doorways by people who knew what they were doing? "This is bigger than us," I said, "bigger than the Park Service. I know, but we're the ones who know the truth. We're the ones who have to do something about it." I looked out at Lake Superior, at the morning sun sparkling on its surface. Beautiful, peaceful, deadly. Hiding doorways to impossible spaces, harboring things that shouldn't exist. "Where do we start?" Walt pulled out his laptop. "We start with research. Find patterns. Map the disappearances. Figure out if there's an organization behind this, or just individuals." He looked at me. "You ready for this? It's not going to be easy. It might not even be possible." I thought about the figure in Marcus Brennan's shape, walking off the dock into the water. I thought about all the others like him, trapped in that place beneath the lake, caught in an eternal waiting. "I'm ready." And so began our real work, not as park rangers, but as something else. Investigators, guardians, whatever you wanted to call people who'd seen behind the veil of normal reality and couldn't look away. We spent our days doing our regular jobs, maintaining trails and helping visitors. But our nights were spent researching, investigating, hunting for other doorways. We found 2 more that first month. Closed them both, though it got harder each time. The Friends of the Deep didn't give up either. We received more threats, found evidence of sabotage. Someone was working against us, trying to keep the doorways open. 6 months in, we recruited David Brennan. He deserved to know the truth about his brother, deserved to help fight against the thing that had taken Marcus. He brought resources we didn't have, connections to families of other missing people. The war, because that's what it became, a quiet war fought in darkness on the shores of a lake that held too many secrets, is still going on. We've closed 17 doorways so far. We think there might be 50 or more. Every time we close one, I think about that massive thing we saw beneath the water, that pale, wrong geometry that reached for us. I think about the boats full of waiting figures. I think about what the lake really is, beneath its beautiful surface. And I keep working, keep searching, keep fighting, because someone has to. Because Marcus Brennan tried and failed, and his failure doesn't mean the effort was worthless. The lake keeps its dead, the old saying goes. But we're teaching it to let go, one rope at a time, even if it takes the rest of our lives. I first saw the line on a Tuesday morning in late September. The beach was empty, as it usually was once Labor Day passed and the tourists went home. Just sand, water, and the constant wind that came off Lake Michigan. I'd been a ranger at Sleeping Bear Dunes for 3 years, and I thought I knew every mood of this lake, every trick it could play with light and shadow. I was wrong. My name is Jamie Sutter, and that morning I was doing my usual patrol along the North Beach, checking for storm damage, trash left by late-season campers, the normal routine. The sun was just coming up, painting the water in shades of copper and gray, beautiful, peaceful, exactly why I'd taken this job. Then I saw it, about 50 feet from shore, running parallel to the beach. There was a line in the water. Not a shadow, not a reflection. A definite line, like someone had drawn it with a ruler across the lake's surface. On one side, the water moved normally, small waves rolling in toward the beach. On the other side, the water was perfectly still. I stopped walking, stared at it. The line stretched as far as I could see in both directions, unwavering, impossibly straight. The still water on the far side had a different quality too, darker, thicker looking. I'd seen ice form on the lake before, usually much later in the year. This looked similar, but it was 60 degrees out. Way too warm for ice. I walked down to the water line, my boots sinking into the wet sand. The moving water lapped at my feet normally, but beyond it, maybe 30 feet out now that I was closer, was that line, and beyond the line, stillness. I grabbed at my radio. Unit 7 to base. Grace, you there? Static, then Grace Dunham's voice came through. Grace was the senior ranger, had been working these shores for 15 years. If anyone would know about this, it was her. Go ahead, Jamie. I'm at the North Beach access point. There's something weird in the water, a line, perfectly straight, running parallel to shore. Water on one side is moving normal, other side is completely still. A pause. How far out? Maybe 40, 50 feet from the current water line. Temperature? I pulled out my thermometer, checked the air. 58 degrees. Water feels normal temperature where the waves are. Haven't touched the still part yet. Don't. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. Not alarm exactly, but concern, like she'd heard of something like this before and didn't like it. I waited on the beach, watching the line. It didn't move, didn't waver. The morning light grew stronger, and I could see the contrast more clearly now. The water beyond the line wasn't just still, it had an almost gel-like appearance, surface tension wrong somehow. A bird flew over, a seagull, and landed on the moving water near the line. It paddled around for a moment, then tried to cross into the still section. The moment its feet touched that water, it let out a sharp cry and took off, wings beating frantically. It circled twice, then flew inland, away from the lake entirely. I've seen seagulls deal with oil slicks, with algae blooms, with all kinds of contamination. They usually just avoid it, paddle around it. I'd never seen one react with what looked like fear. Grace's truck appeared on the access road, pulling up fast. She got out, already pulling on her work gloves, binoculars around her neck. Grace was in her 40s, gray, starting to show in her dark hair, face weathered by wind and sun. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd seen everything these shores could throw at her. She walked down to where I stood, looked out at the line. Didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked. "Huh," she finally said. "You've seen this before?" "Something like it, once, maybe 10 years ago." She raised her binoculars, studied the line. It was gone by afternoon. We never figured out what caused it. What did it look like up close? We didn't get up close. By the time we got equipment out here to test it, it had disappeared. She lowered the binoculars. "How long has it been here?" "I found it maybe 15 minutes ago. Could have been here longer." Grace pulled out her phone, took photos from multiple angles. Then she walked down to the water line, stood where the waves were breaking. "I'm going to get closer. You stay here, keep documenting." "Grace, that bird, I saw. I'll be careful." She waded into the water, moving slowly, deliberately. The waves were small, just ankle high. She went out 10 feet, 20 feet, the water up to her knees now. 30 feet, and she was almost at the line. She stopped about 5 feet from it, stood there studying it. Even from shore, I could see the difference. The water around her legs moved, rippled. The water beyond that line was smooth as glass, undisturbed. Grace reached out with one gloved hand, extended it toward the still water, touched it. I saw her body go rigid, not like she'd been shocked, not like she was in pain, just rigid, frozen in place. For 3 seconds, 4, 5, then she pulled her hand back quickly, stumbled backward, nearly fell. She turned and waded back to shore fast, not looking back at the line. When she reached me, her face was pale. She was breathing hard, staring at her gloved hand. "What happened?" I asked. "It's not water." Her voice was shaky. "Or it is water, but it's wrong. Feels like touching cold gel. Thick. And it's..." She paused, seemed to be searching for words. "It's moving. Not flowing, moving. Pulsing. Like it has a heartbeat." I looked at the line, that perfect stillness. How is that possible? "I don't know." Grace pulled off her glove, examined her hand. No marks, no visible damage. "We need to document this properly. Get water samples, temperature readings, photographs, and we need to call this in to the DNR. What do we tell them? The truth. That there's an anomaly in the water and we need someone with better equipment to figure out what it is." We spent the next hour documenting everything we could. I took photos and videos while Grace measured distances, recorded GPS coordinates, noted the exact position of the line relative to shore landmarks. She tried to get a water sample from the still section, but her sampling bottle couldn't break the surface. It was like trying to push through a membrane. "It's too thick," she said. "The bottle just slides along the surface." The sun was fully up now, and we could see the line more clearly. It stretched north and south along the beach as far as we could see, that perfect geometric straightness that didn't exist in nature. Grace made her calls while I kept watch. The line didn't move, didn't change. just sat there in the water, dividing the lake into two different realities. DNR is sending someone, Grace said when she finished. But they can't get here until this afternoon. They're asking us to keep people away from the beach until they arrive. Should be easy. Nobody comes out here this time of year. Unless word gets out. Then everyone will want to see it. We put up temporary closure signs at the beach access points, then settled in to wait. Grace brought camping chairs from her truck, and we sat on the beach like we were just enjoying the view. But we were both watching that line, waiting for it to do something. Around noon, it did. I was eating a sandwich, not paying close attention, when Grace said, "Jamie, look at the line." I looked. For a moment, I didn't see what she meant. Then I realized the line had moved. Not much, maybe 5 feet, but it was definitely closer to shore than it had been that morning. "Did you see it move?" I asked. "No." Was looking at my phone for maybe 2 minutes. When I looked back up, it was closer. We both stared at the line. It remained motionless, that same perfect stillness. But Grace was right, it was closer. The section of normal water between the shore and the line had shrunk. "It's coming toward us," Grace said quietly. "Water doesn't do that. Tides don't work that way on the Great Lakes. I know." We watched for another hour. The line moved twice more each time when we weren't looking directly at it. Just a few feet each time, but always closer to shore. It was like it only moved when we weren't paying attention, when our eyes were elsewhere. "This is going to sound crazy," I said, "but I think it knows we're watching." Grace didn't respond immediately. Then, "I was thinking the same thing." The DNR team arrived at 2:30 p.m. 3 people in a white van with testing equipment. They introduced themselves, Dr. Sarah Kent, a limnologist, and 2 technicians whose names I didn't catch. Dr. Kent was all business, already pulling on a hazmat suit before she even looked at the lake. "Show me," she said. We walked down to the beach. The line was about 30 feet from shore now, close enough that you could see the texture difference clearly. The normal water was choppy, wind-driven. The water beyond the line looked viscous, thick, moving in slow undulations that didn't match the wind patterns. Dr. Kent stopped at the water line, raised binoculars, studied the line for a long time without speaking. "Well?" Grace finally asked. "I need samples, and I need to see it up close." She turned to her technicians. "Get the boat ready. We're going out there." They had brought a small, inflatable boat, the kind with an outboard motor. It took them 15 minutes to get it set up and launched. Dr. Kent and 1 technician got in. The motor sputtered to life, and they headed out toward the line. We watched from shore. The boat moved through the normal water easily, cutting through the small waves. When it got within 10 feet of the line, the motor sound changed pitch. Started to strain, like it was pushing against resistance. Dr. Kent said something to the technician. The boat slowed, crept closer. 5 feet from the line, 3 feet. The motor was really struggling now, whining with effort. Then the boat touched the line. The motor died instantly. Not sputtered, not gradually. Just stopped, like someone had cut the power. The boat sat there, half in the normal water, half in the still section. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the boat started to tilt. Not tip over, tilt. Like the water on the far side was denser, heavier, pulling that end of the boat down. Dr. Kent and the technician scrambled backward, away from the line, and the boat righted itself slightly. Dr. Kent was shouting something, but we were too far away to hear. The technician pulled out a paddle, started trying to push the boat back into the normal water. It took him 3 tries, the paddle barely making purchase in that thick water, but finally the boat broke free. The motor started on its own the moment they were clear of the line. They came back to shore fast. Dr. Kent climbed out of the boat and immediately started stripping off her hazmat suit. "We're leaving," she said, "right now. And you need to close this beach, close the whole area as far as that line extends." "What is it?" Grace asked. "I don't know. But it's not a natural phenomenon. That line is too perfect, too geometric. And water doesn't behave like that, ever." "Is it dangerous?" Dr. Kent looked at her. "That line moved closer to shore while we were out there. We watched it. It moved maybe 2 feet in the time it took us to approach and retreat, and when the boat was in contact with it," she paused. "I've studied Great Lakes ecology for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this, and I've never seen water that feels actively hostile." "Hostile?" I said. "Water can't be hostile. That can." They packed up faster than they'd set up. Dr. Kent made phone calls from her van, her voice urgent even though we couldn't make out the words. Before they drove away, she came over to where Grace and I stood. "I'm recommending they close not just this beach, but all beaches in a 10-mile radius. We don't know how far this line extends, or if there are others." She looked out at the water. "And I'm recommending they do it tonight, before that line reaches shore." "You think it will reach shore?" Grace asked. "Yes, and I don't think it will stop there." They left. Grace and I stayed, watching the line continue its impossible crawl toward land. By 5 p.m., it was 20 feet from shore. By 6 p.m., 15 feet. The sun was setting, and in the dimming light the still water beyond the line looked almost black. "We need to go," Grace said, "before it gets dark." "Shouldn't we stay? Monitor it?" "Jamie, if Dr. Kent is right, if that line reaches shore—" She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We drove back to the ranger station, but we didn't go home. Grace pulled out the monitoring system, brought up the beach cameras. We had 6 cameras positioned along the north beach, covering about a mile of shoreline. The line was visible in 3 of them, a clear demarcation between normal water and something else. We watched the feeds. The line continued moving closer to shore, a few feet at a time. Always when you weren't looking directly at the specific camera. It was like it was aware of being observed, and only moved in the blind spots. "Grace," I said, "look at camera 4. She looked. Camera 4 showed a section of beach about half a mile north of where we'd been. The line was visible there too, same distance from shore. But as we watched, the line in camera 4 started moving faster. Much faster. While the line in camera 3 was maybe 12 feet from shore, the line in camera 4 was already touching the sand." "It's not uniform," Grace said. "Different sections are moving at different speeds. Why would it do that?" "I don't know, unless—" She pulled up a map of the beach, overlaid with the camera positions, started marking where the line was in each camera view. After a moment, a pattern emerged. "Look," she said. "The sections moving fastest are the sections between cameras, where we have gaps in coverage. You think it's avoiding the cameras? Or targeting the gaps, moving where it won't be observed as closely?" I felt cold despite the heated ranger station. That doesn't make sense. It's water. Water doesn't think. It doesn't plan. "Then explain what we're seeing." I couldn't. We called the emergency line, reported what we were observing. They told us county sheriffs were already being mobilized to evacuate properties near the shoreline. That the governor's office was being briefed. That we should leave the area if we felt unsafe. But we stayed. Someone needed to watch, to document what was happening. By 9 p.m., the line had reached shore in 2 of the camera views. The moment it touched the sand, something changed. The gel-like water didn't stop at the waterline. It kept coming, spreading up the beach in a slow, steady advance. A few inches per minute, but constant, unwavering. And where it spread, the sand changed. Became darker, wetter, wrong-looking. "It's not just water," Grace said. "It's converting things, changing them." We watched camera 4, the section where the line had been advancing fastest. The gel-like substance was maybe 20 feet up the beach now, nearly to the dune grass. As we watched, it reached the grass. The plants didn't bend or wash away. They just stopped moving, became still, rigid, like they'd been frozen in place. "We need to go," I said. "Now." Grace nodded, started shutting down the monitoring system. As she did, I noticed something on camera 6, the northernmost camera. The view was mostly normal beach and water, but at the very edge of the frame, barely visible, was movement. Not the water. Something in the water, on the still side of the line. A shape, large and dark, moving beneath that gel-like surface. Moving parallel to the shore, heading south, toward us. "Grace," I said, "camera 6, do you see?" The power went out. Not just in the station. Everything. Lights, computers, the hum of electronics. Complete darkness and silence. Grace's flashlight clicked on a moment later, followed by mine. We stood in the small circle of light, listening. Outside, I could hear the wind, the normal nighttime sounds of the forest behind the ranger station, and something else, a sound I couldn't quite identify, like water moving, but thicker, heavier, closer than it should be. "The lake is half a mile from here," Grace said quietly. "I know. That sound is closer than half a mile." We moved to the window, shined our flashlights out. The beam didn't reach far, maybe 50 feet. But in that circle of light, we could see the parking lot, the trees beyond, everything normal. Then Grace angled her light down, toward the ground near the station. The driveway was wet, not rain wet. That same dark, thick wetness we'd seen on the beach. And it was spreading toward the building, a slow but steady advance of gel-like substance that reflected our flashlight beams in a way normal water didn't. "Back door," Grace said. "Now!" We ran through the dark station, our flashlight beams bouncing wildly. The back door led to a trail that went inland, away from the lake. We burst out into the night, kept running. Behind us, I heard something that might have been water, might have been something else. A wet, sliding sound, moving over ground that should be dry. We ran for maybe 5 minutes before Grace stopped, breathing hard, hand on a tree trunk for support. I stopped next to her, my own lungs burning. "What is that thing?" I gasped. "I don't know. But it's not water. Water doesn't hunt." We stood there in the darkness, listening. The wet sliding sound had stopped, or maybe it was just too far away to hear now. Grace's flashlight swept the path behind us. No signs of pursuit, no gel-like substance spreading through the forest. But we both knew it was still coming, moving slowly, patiently in the dark. Advancing where the cameras couldn't see it, where we couldn't watch it. Converting everything it touched into more of itself. The lake line had reached land, and it wasn't stopping. We hiked inland through the darkness, putting distance between us and whatever was spreading from the shore. Grace had a GPS unit on her belt, and we followed it toward the main road, hoping to find help, or at least get to higher ground. Around midnight, we reached a small parking area used by inland trail hikers. Grace's truck was back at the ranger station, probably surrounded by that gel-like substance by now. But there was a maintenance shed here, and Grace had keys for all the park buildings. Inside, we found emergency supplies, flashlights with fresh batteries, first aid kit, emergency radio. Grace tried the radio first, cycling through frequencies. Most were dead air, but on the emergency band we picked up chatter. Evacuations in progress along the entire western shore. Substance spreading inland approximately 3 feet per hour. Hazmat teams are refusing to approach, says it's outside their protocols. Military has been notified, but no deployment order yet. The voices were stressed, confused. Nobody seemed to understand what was happening or how to stop it. Grace tried to transmit. This is Park Ranger Grace Dunham, Sleeping Bear Dunes. We're inland, about 2 miles from the North Beach. The substance originated from the lake. It's not water, it's something else, over. Static for a moment. Then, Ranger Dunham, this is County Emergency Management. What can you tell us about the substance? It started as a line in the water, perfectly straight, running parallel to shore. Gel-like consistency when touched. It spread to shore around 9 p.m. local time, then continued inland. It converts whatever it touches. Sand, vegetation, everything. We lost power at the ranger station when it got close. Over. Did you observe any pattern to its spread? Any weakness? Grace looked at me. I thought about what we'd seen on the cameras. It seems to avoid direct observation, I said. Moves faster where cameras can't see it. Slows down when being watched closely. Grace relayed this information. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Ranger Dunham, we need you to get to the evacuation center in Empire. Can you make it there safely? Empire was about 8 miles south, a long walk in the dark, but doable if we stuck to the roads. Affirmative, we'll head there now, over. Negative, remain in place until sunrise. The substance is... It's been observed to move faster in darkness. We've lost 2 response teams who tried to navigate near affected areas after dark. Wait for daylight, over. Grace and I exchanged looks. The idea of waiting here in a small wooden shed while that thing crept closer was terrifying. But the idea of walking through the dark forest with it somewhere behind us was worse. Roger that. We'll hold position until dawn, over and out. We secured the shed as best we could, pushing a workbench against the door. It wouldn't stop anything, but it might give us warning. Then we settled in to wait, sitting on the floor with our backs to opposite walls, flashlights off to conserve batteries. In the darkness, I could hear Grace breathing, hear the wind in the trees outside, hear my own heartbeat. And underneath it all, maybe real or maybe imagination, that wet, sliding sound. Distant, but constant, coming closer. Tell me something, I said quietly. When you saw this 10 years ago, how long did it last? 4 hours. We spotted it around 6 a.m. By 10 a.m. it was gone, just normal water again. Did it reach shore? A pause. No, it stayed about 100 feet out, moved north along the coast for about 2 miles, then dissipated. So it left, it went away. This time is different, Jamie. 10 years ago, it was smaller, moved slower, and it never reached land. I heard her shift position. This time, it's like it learned, like it knows what it's doing. Water doesn't learn, I know, but I keep coming back to what Dr. Kent said. That line was too perfect, too geometric. Nature doesn't make straight lines like that. People do. Machines do. You think someone made it? Some kind of experiment? I don't know what I think anymore. All I know is the thing outside isn't following any natural laws. It's not responding to gravity, temperature, wind. It's just spreading, like it has a purpose. I thought about the shape I'd seen on camera 6, that large, dark form moving under the gel surface. I hadn't told Grace about it, partly because the power had cut out immediately after, and it seemed less important than running for our lives, but mostly because I wasn't sure what I'd seen, and I didn't want to make things worse with speculation. But now, sitting in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about it. If that gel-like substance was spreading, consuming everything it touched, what had that shape been? Something trapped in it? Something created by it, or something controlling it. "Grace," I said, "on camera 6, right before the power went out, did you see anything moving in the water?" "No. Why?" "I thought I saw something under the surface, large." She was quiet for a moment. "Large like a boat? Debris?" "Large like, I don't know. It was moving with purpose, swimming maybe, heading south along the shore. Toward the ranger station." "Yeah." More silence, then, "There are things in the Great Lakes that people don't talk about. Old stories, legends. The native tribes had names for them. Lake monsters, some called them. But also lake spirits. Guardians. Things that lived in the deep water and only came up when something was wrong. You think this is one of those things? I think the lakes are older and stranger than we understand. I think there are depths we've never explored. Places where the bottom drops away into darkness and nobody knows what's down there." She paused. "And I think maybe something woke up or came back. And that gel, that line, it's not the thing itself. It's a sign, a warning, or a transformation." The way she said it made my skin prickle. A transformation into what? I don't know. But I keep thinking about how it converts things. How the sand changed, how the plants stopped moving. What if it's not destroying things? What if it's changing them into something else? Something that can exist in both water and on land? I didn't want to think about that. The implications were too vast, too terrifying, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if Grace was right? What if this wasn't contamination or pollution, or some strange weather phenomenon? What if the lake was actively changing the land, making it suitable for something that needed both environments? We sat in silence for a long time. At some point, exhaustion won out over fear, and I dozed off sitting up, flashlight clutched in my hand. I woke to sunlight streaming through the shed's small window. Grace was already up, looking out through a crack in the door. "It's morning," she said, "and I think we have a problem." I got up, joints stiff from sleeping on the floor, and looked over her shoulder. The clearing around the shed was covered in that dark wetness. It had crept in during the night, surrounding us. The substance was maybe 10 feet from the shed walls on all sides, creating a perfect circle of dry ground around our building. A perfect circle. "It went around us," I said. "Not around. It deliberately avoided this building, left this area dry." Grace looked at me. "Why would it do that? Maybe it can't affect structures. Maybe the wood or the foundation blocks it. Or maybe it knows we're in here and it's leaving us alone on purpose." That thought was somehow more disturbing than being attacked. The idea that this thing was intelligent enough to make decisions, to choose what to convert and what to leave intact. Grace tried the emergency radio again. Still working. Still had battery. "This is Ranger Dunham. We're surrounded by the substance but unharmed. It avoided our building. Repeat, it deliberately avoided converting this structure. Over." The response came quickly. "Ranger Dunham, glad you're safe. We're seeing similar patterns elsewhere. The substance avoids buildings with people inside, but once evacuated, those buildings are converted within hours. We think it can detect human presence somehow. Over." "What's the current extent of the spread?" "Over." 2 miles inland from the shore as of 7 a.m., still advancing. The entire coastline from Frankfort to Glen Arbor is affected. Approximately 40 square miles of landmass has been converted so far, and it's accelerating. Over. 40 square miles, in less than 12 hours. At that rate, it would reach the interstate by nightfall, would reach major population centers within days. What's being done to stop it? Over. A long pause. Everything that can be done, but nothing's working. Fire doesn't affect it. Chemicals don't stop it. We tried building physical barriers, but it just flows over or around them. The only thing that seems to slow it down is human observation. Areas with cameras or constant human presence show reduced spread rates. But we can't watch every square foot of affected area. Over. Grace and I looked at each other. The substance avoided direct observation and human presence. That wasn't water behavior. That wasn't any natural behavior. Has anyone tried approaching the original line, where it started? Over. Negative. The entire beach area is converted now. Can't get close without entering the affected zone. And anyone who enters doesn't come back out. Not responsive to radio calls, not visible on thermal imaging. Just gone. Over. Gone as in converted? I asked. Grace relayed the question. The answer made my blood run cold. Unknown. Bodies are recovered afterward, but they're changed, not human anymore. More like statues made of that gel substance, frozen in position. Some of them are still standing, still in the poses they were in when the substance reached them, but not alive. Not dead either, as far as we can tell, just stopped over. I thought about the plants on the beach, how they'd frozen in place when the gel reached them. The same thing was happening to people. We need to leave, I said. We need to get to Empire while we still can. Grace nodded. She opened the shed door carefully, looked out at the circle of converted ground surrounding us. The substance wasn't moving at the moment, but it was close enough that we'd have to walk through it to get to the trail that led toward the road. If we move fast, Grace said, and don't stop, we might make it through before it can react. Or we might end up like those recovery workers, frozen in place. You have a better idea? I didn't. We packed our few supplies, checked our route on the GPS. The nearest clear road was half a mile southeast. If we ran, we could cover that in maybe 10 minutes. If the substance didn't react, didn't chase us, didn't speed up to cut us off. On 3, Grace said. She gripped her pack, positioned herself at the door. 1, 2, 3. We ran. The moment our feet hit the converted ground, I felt it. The surface was wrong, slightly yielding, like running on a gym mat. And it was cold, way colder than the morning air temperature. Each footstep left a depression that slowly filled back in, the substance moving like it was alive. But we kept running. Behind us, I heard a sound like water rushing. Looked back and saw the substance rippling, moving, chasing us. Not fast, but faster than it had been moving before. Like our presence, our movement, had activated it. "Don't look back," Grace shouted. "Just run." The trail ahead was still dry, still normal dirt and leaves. 200 feet, 100, 50. Something grabbed my ankle. Not grabbed, stuck. The substance had surged ahead somehow, cut across our path, and my foot had landed in it. I tried to pull free, but it held firm, already hardening around my boot. Grace was ahead of me, just reaching the dry ground. She turned, saw me stuck, ran back. "No," I shouted. "Keep going." But she didn't. She grabbed my arm, pulled, both of us straining against the substance that was now creeping up my leg, converting my jeans, my skin, turning everything it touched into more of itself. The cold was intense, burning. I could feel my leg going numb, heavy, foreign. Grace pulled harder, and I felt something give. Not the substance releasing me. My boot coming off, my foot sliding free. I stumbled forward, Grace caught me, and we ran. The substance had my boot now. I watched as it flowed over the leather, converting it in seconds. Then it stopped spreading, settled back into its slow advance like it had gotten what it wanted. Like taking my boot had been enough. We reached the dry ground, kept running until we hit the main trail. Only then did we stop, both of us gasping for breath. I looked at my foot. The sock was intact, My toes were there, but the skin was pale, almost gray, and I couldn't feel anything. No pain, no cold, nothing. "Can you walk?" Grace asked. I tried putting weight on it. The leg supported me, but it felt wrong. Stiff, mechanical. "I think so. We need to keep moving. That thing is still coming." We walked as fast as we could, Grace supporting me when my numb leg threatened to give out. The trail led to a paved road, and from there we could see other people. Emergency vehicles, news vans, crowds of evacuees heading inland. Someone spotted us, waved, and a paramedic ran over. They loaded me into an ambulance despite my protest that I was fine. Grace climbed in with me. As they closed the doors, I looked back at the forest we'd come from. The trees at the edge were different now. Darker. Still. The substance had reached them, was converting them. Soon the entire forest would be transformed into whatever that gel-like material was creating. The ambulance drove us to Empire, to the evacuation center that had been set up at the high school. Hundreds of people were there, maybe thousands, all displaced from homes near the shore. The gymnasium was full of cots and confused, frightened faces. A doctor examined my leg, ran tests. The skin was still gray, still numb, but not spreading. Whatever had started to convert my tissue had stopped when the boot was removed, when I broke contact with the main substance. "You're lucky," the doctor said. "We've seen others who had prolonged contact. They're completely converted now, standing in the parking lot like statues not responding to anything. We don't know how to reverse it." "Have you tried cutting away the converted tissue?" We tried on one patient. The substance just spread to the surgical tools, started converting them too. We had to abandon the procedure. He looked at my leg. "For now, you're stable. But if the numbness spreads, if the gray coloration gets worse, come back immediately." Grace and I found a quiet corner of the gym, sat on cots next to each other. Around us, people were watching news coverage on their phones. The substance was national news now, maybe international. Satellite images showed the dark stain spreading along the Michigan shoreline, moving inland, swallowing towns and forests. On one phone screen, I saw an aerial view of the ranger station where we'd worked. The building was gone, converted into a dark mass that barely resembled its former structure. The parking lot, the trees, everything was that same uniform dark gel. "Jamie," Grace said quietly, "look at this." She showed me her phone. A technical readout from NOAA, posted to their emergency feed. They'd been monitoring the lake's water levels and had noticed something strange. The lake level had dropped 3 inches in the last 12 hours. 3 inches doesn't sound like much, Grace said. But for a lake this size, that's billions of gallons of water. It's not evaporating. It's not flowing out through drainage. It's just disappearing. Being converted, I said. The lake is turning itself into that gel substance. Or something is converting the lake, using it as raw material for whatever this is. She scrolled through more data. And it's not just Lake Michigan. There are reports now from Lake Huron, Lake Superior, lines appearing in the water. The same geometric perfection, the same behavior. All the Great Lakes, all 5, started at roughly the same time about 2 hours ago. They're coordinated somehow. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a local phenomenon. It was a region-wide event, maybe continent-wide. The largest freshwater system in the world was being systematically converted into something else. A commotion at the gym entrance drew our attention. Military personnel were arriving, setting up equipment. A colonel took the makeshift stage where the evacuation coordinator had been making announcements. "Attention, everyone. I'm Colonel Marcus Rivera, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We're establishing a perimeter 30 miles inland from the current lake shoreline. This facility is within that perimeter. You'll all be relocated further inland within the next 12 hours. Transportation is being arranged." Voices rose in protest. Questions shouted from the crowd. The colonel raised his hand for quiet. "I understand this is difficult, but the substance is still spreading, and we cannot guarantee the safety of anyone within 50 miles of the original lake shoreline. We're evacuating approximately 8 million people from the Great Lakes region. This is the largest evacuation in U.S. history." "What about our homes?" someone shouted. "What about stopping this thing?" another voice called. The colonel's expression was grim. "We're trying everything we can to stop or slow the spread, but right now our priority is saving lives. Please cooperate with evacuation orders. Please stay calm. And please, if anyone has any information about the substance, its origin, or how to stop it, come see me immediately." The crowd erupted in chaos. People were on their phones trying to reach family members. Children were crying. The reality was settling in. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't something that would blow over. The Great Lakes were being transformed, and nobody knew how to stop it. Grace grabbed my arm. "We need to talk to him. The colonel. We know things that might be important." We made our way to where Colonel Rivera had set up a temporary command post in the school library. He listened to our story without interrupting, taking notes, asking pointed questions about the timeline, the behavior patterns, everything we'd observed. When we finished, he looked at his notes for a long moment. Then, "You said the substance moves slower when under direct observation." "Yes, sir. It seems to avoid cameras and human presence. And it started as a line in the water, geometric, perfect. Yes, sir." He pulled up a map on his laptop, showed us satellite images from this morning. The substance wasn't spreading randomly. It was moving in patterns, geometric shapes, creating what looked like massive networks spreading from each lake. "We've been analyzing the spread patterns," the colonel said. "Whatever this is, it's intelligent, not just reactive, but strategic. It's creating a grid, a network, like it's building something." "Building what?" I asked. "We don't know, but look at this." He zoomed in on a section of the map where several of the gel lines intersected. At each intersection point, the substance was thicker, darker, formed into raised structures. These nodes are appearing at regular intervals, exactly 5 miles apart. Mathematical precision, and they're all growing larger. Grace leaned closer to the screen. "What happens when they're finished growing?" "That's what we need to find out. And we're running out of time." He looked at us. "You two are the only people who've had prolonged exposure to the substance and survived intact. I need you to help us understand it. Will you work with my team?" I looked at my gray, numb leg. Looked at Grace, who'd stayed behind to help me when she could have saved herself. Thought about all the people in this gym, all the people across the Great Lakes region, facing a threat nobody understood. "Yes," I said, "we'll help." Colonel Rivera's team set up a research facility in an abandoned warehouse 20 miles inland. It was hastily constructed, more of a field laboratory than a proper research center, but it was equipped with everything they'd managed to gather on short notice: microscopes, sampling equipment, communication gear, and most importantly, a live feed from dozens of drones monitoring the substance's spread. Grace and I were given quarters in a trailer near the main building. Medical staff checked on us every few hours, monitoring my leg for any sign that the conversion was continuing. So far, it remained stable. Gray, numb, but not spreading. The research team was a mix of military personnel, scientists from various government agencies, and a few civilians like us who had relevant experience. Dr. Kent was there, looking exhausted but focused. She'd been working nonstop since the spread began, trying to understand what the substance was made of. It's not a chemical compound, she explained to the assembled team on our first day. It's not biological, not in any sense we understand. The molecular structure is wrong. It doesn't follow standard bonding patterns. It's like someone took water and rewrote its fundamental properties. Can we analyze it? Colonel Rivera asked. We've tried. Every sample we collect starts to convert our equipment the moment it's placed in a sealed container. We can observe it from a distance, measure its properties remotely, but we can't isolate it for proper study. She pulled up a microscope image on the main screen. This is what we've been able to see. Look at the structure. The image showed the substance at high magnification. Instead of the random molecular chaos of normal water, this had structure. Geometric patterns, repeating shapes, almost like circuit boards at the molecular level. It's organized, someone said. Designed. That's the only explanation that makes sense, Dr. Kent agreed. This isn't natural. Someone or something created it. For what purpose? Asked one of the military scientists. Unknown, but based on the spread patterns, the node formations, and the selective conversion of materials, our working theory is that it's building infrastructure, a network of some kind. Grace raised her hand. Dr. Kent, when I touched it at the beach, I said it felt like it was pulsing, like it had a heartbeat. Have you observed any rhythmic patterns in the substance? Yes. Consistent pulsations at approximately 0.8 hertz, just below the frequency of a human heartbeat. Dr. Kent pulled up another graph. And here's what's interesting. The pulsations from different locations are synchronized. The substance in Michigan pulses at the exact same time as the substance in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, in Ontario. They're connected somehow, communicating across hundreds of miles. How is that possible? I asked. We don't know. Radio waves? Some kind of quantum entanglement? Or maybe the substance itself is one continuous system, and we're just seeing different parts of the same organism. That word, organism, hung in the air. People shifted uncomfortably. The idea that this was alive, that it was a single entity spreading across thousands of square miles, was terrifying. Colonel Rivera broke the silence. Whatever it is, we need to find a way to stop it. Our military assets have been ineffective. Conventional weapons don't damage it. Fire doesn't burn it. We even tried dropping seawater on it, thinking it might be vulnerable to salt water. Nothing works. Because you're treating it like an enemy to be destroyed, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. An older man stood there, late 60s, wearing civilian clothes. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades outdoors, and something about his bearing suggested authority. Who are you? Colonel Rivera asked, though not unkindly. Dr. Raymond Marsh, anthropologist, specializing in Great Lakes indigenous cultures. I was brought in this morning as a consultant. He walked to the front of the room. You're all thinking about this wrong. This isn't an invasion, it's a return. A return of what? Grace asked. The old stories say the lakes were different once. Before humans came, before even the indigenous peoples. The lakes were alive or contained life that we don't have words for anymore. Spirits, some called them. Elder things. The tribes had different names, but the stories were consistent. There were beings that lived in the deepest parts of the lakes, in places where the bottom drops away into darkness. And these beings could change the water, change the land, reshape the world. You're talking about mythology, one of the military scientists said dismissively. I'm talking about oral history that goes back thousands of years. Stories that were considered fact, not fiction, until European colonization. Dr. Marsh pulled up an image on his tablet, passed it to the main screen. It showed cave paintings from somewhere in the Great Lakes region. The art depicted wavy lines emanating from a large body of water, spreading across land, with human figures standing in frozen poses. This was found in a cave system in northern Michigan. It's estimated to be over 3,000 years old. The indigenous people who made this were documenting something they'd seen. The image was eerily similar to what was happening now. The geometric lines, the spread pattern, the frozen figures. "So you're saying this has happened before?" Colonel Rivera asked. "I'm saying the lakes have done this before, yes. And according to the stories, it stopped. The elder beings went back to sleep, back to the deep places. The land returned to normal, and life continued. How did it stop? What made them go back?" Dr. Marsh shook his head. "The stories don't say. Or if they did, that knowledge was lost. But there's a consistent theme in all the narratives: communication. The tribes that survived learned to communicate with the beings in the water. They established a relationship, a mutual understanding. The beings would emerge occasionally, reshape parts of the shoreline, but never spread far. Never threaten the whole land. So we need to communicate with it," Grace said. "Figure out what it wants. If it wants anything, it might just be following its nature, like a plant growing toward sunlight. It might not even be aware of us as separate entities." Colonel Rivera looked skeptical but thoughtful. "How would we even attempt communication with something that's fundamentally alien?" "The same way we communicate with anything, through patterns, through response. The substance reacts to observation, to human presence. That's already a form of interaction. We just need to make it intentional, deliberate." The team spent the next few hours brainstorming approaches. Some scientists suggested using lights in patterns, seeing if the substance would respond. Others proposed using sound frequencies building on the rhythmic pulsing Dr. Kent had observed. Dr. Marsh suggested returning to the source point, the original line where it all started, and attempting direct contact. "That's suicide," someone objected. "Everyone who's entered the affected zone has been converted. Everyone who entered passively, yes. But what if we enter with intent to communicate? What if we signal our purpose? How do you signal purpose to something that doesn't think like us?" Grace spoke up. "The substance avoided the shed where Jamie and I stayed. It deliberately left us alone. It also released Jamie after converting just his boot. It could have taken more, but it stopped. That suggests it can distinguish between acceptable conversion and unacceptable harm. It has limits, rules. Or it was experimenting," I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. What if it took my boot as a sample, to understand what we're made of, what we're wearing? It got what it needed and stopped. Dr. Kent nodded slowly. That would align with its behavior. It converts selectively, focuses on certain materials while avoiding others. It's learning about our world, cataloging it. Then it might be willing to learn more, Dr. Marsh said. Might be receptive to direct teaching. Colonel Rivera made a decision. We'll attempt communication, but we do it safely, with full protective protocols and extraction plans. Dr. Marsh, you'll lead the communication team. Ranger Dunham, Ranger Sutter, I want you both on the team. You've survived contact before, and you understand the substance's behavior better than anyone. I looked at my gray leg. The thought of going back near that thing made me sick with fear. But Grace was right. We had survived when others hadn't. Maybe there was a reason for that. "I'm in," Grace said. "Me too," I added. They gave us 12 hours to prepare. The plan was to approach one of the node structures that had formed at an intersection point in the converted zone. These nodes were growing into dome-like formations, and the team theorized they might be some kind of central processing points or communication hubs. We'd approach at dawn, when the substance was typically less active. We'd wear protective suits, though everyone acknowledged those were mostly psychological comfort. The suits wouldn't actually stop conversion if the substance decided to act. We'd bring communication equipment, lights, speakers, recording devices, and we'd have a helicopter on standby for emergency extraction. The night before the mission, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those frozen figures Dr. Kent had described. People caught mid-step, converted into statues made of gel. Was that what would happen to us? Would we become permanent fixtures in this new landscape? Frozen monuments to humanity's attempt to understand something beyond our comprehension. Grace found me sitting outside the trailer, staring toward the horizon where the substance's glow was visible. Yes, glow. As it had grown, it had started emitting a faint bioluminescence, turning the night sky over the affected zones an eerie blue-green. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, sitting down next to me, thinking about what we're walking into tomorrow. "We don't have to do this. We could say no, let someone else try. But we won't." "No," she agreed, "we won't." We sat in silence for a while. Then Grace said, "I keep thinking about what Dr. Marsh said, about the old stories, about how this happened before and stopped. What if we're living through one of those stories? What if thousands of years from now people will tell tales about this time? What will they say about us? Maybe that we were brave, or maybe that we were fools." She looked at the glow on the horizon. "Or maybe they won't remember us at all. Maybe the substance will convert everything, and there won't be any people left to tell stories." Cheerful thought? Just realistic. She stood up. "Get some sleep, Jamie. Tomorrow we find out if we can talk to a lake." Dawn came too quickly. The team assembled at 5 a.m. Grace and I, Dr. Marsh, Dr. Kent, and 2 military specialists trained in hazardous environment operations. We wore white protective suits that made us look like astronauts. The helicopter flew us to the edge of the converted zone, landing a safe distance from the substance's current boundary. From the air, the transformation was even more shocking. What had been forests, towns, beaches, was now a uniform dark expanse, broken up by the raised node structures every 5 miles. The structures had grown larger overnight, some now reaching 50 feet high. They pulsed with that same blue-green light, rhythmic and hypnotic. We landed and transferred to a ground vehicle, driving as close as we dared to the nearest node. The boundary of the converted zone was sharp, a clear line between normal grass and that dark, gel-like surface. We stopped 20 feet from the line. "Everybody ready?" Colonel Rivera's voice came through our helmet radios. A chorus of affirmatives. We exited the vehicle, approached the boundary on foot. Up close, you could see the substance moving, that slow undulation, responding to our presence. It knew we were here. Dr. Marsh was carrying a metal staff with lights attached to it in patterns he'd designed based on indigenous symbols. He stepped to the boundary, raised the staff, and activated the lights. They flashed in a specific sequence. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. Pause. Repeat. "That's a greeting pattern," Dr. Marsh explained over the radio. "Common across multiple Great Lakes tribes, it signals peaceful intent, a desire to communicate." We waited. The substance continued its slow movement, showing no obvious response. Dr. Marsh repeated the light pattern. Still nothing. "Try sound," Dr. Kent suggested. One of the military specialists activated a speaker, broadcasting a tone that matched the 0.8 hertz pulsing they'd observed in the substance. The sound was deep, subsonic, felt more than heard. A heartbeat rhythm. The substance responded. The undulations grew stronger, more pronounced. The surface began forming patterns. ripples that spread out from our position in perfect geometric circles. Then the circles transformed into shapes, symbols, something that might have been writing in a language nobody recognized. "It's responding," Grace whispered. Dr. Marsh stepped closer to the boundary. "We come in peace," he said, speaking clearly. "We want to understand. We want to know your purpose." The shapes on the substance's surface shifted, reformed. They looked almost like words now, but made from liquid, from gel, constantly flowing and changing. Dr. Kent was recording everything, her voice excited as she narrated for the cameras. Then one of the shapes solidified, became clearer. It was a human figure, a simplified outline, like a stick figure, but unmistakable. The figure stood at the center of a circular pattern. "It's showing us something," I said. "A person. In the middle of what? A location, a purpose?" More shapes formed. The circle around the figure expanded, and within it, more simplified shapes appeared. Trees, buildings, water, a landscape. And the figure stood at the center of it all, arms outstretched. "It's showing us ourselves," Grace said, "how it sees us. We're at the center of our world." The image shifted. The circle that represented our world began to darken, to fill with the same gel-like substance, but the figure remained, unchanged, still at the center. "It's showing us the conversion," Dr. Kent said. "But the person stays intact. It's not destroying us. It's incorporating us." New shapes formed. The figure was no longer alone. Multiple figures now, all standing in that converted landscape, and between them, lines of connection, linking them together in a network. "It's trying to show us its purpose," Dr. Marsh said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's not an invasion. It's an integration. It wants to connect everything, everyone, into one unified system." "Why?" I asked. "Why would it want that?" The shapes shifted one more time. The network of connected figures formed a larger pattern, and that pattern was geometric, perfect, beautiful. It looked almost like a mandala, or a circuit board, or a vast living organism. All the individual parts working together as one whole. Then the image faded. The substance returned to its gentle undulations. "Did we just have a conversation with the Great Lakes?" one of the military specialists asked. "I think we did," Dr. Marsh replied. "And I think it was telling us that this isn't an attack. It's an offer to join its network, to become part of something larger." "An offer we can refuse?" Colonel Rivera asked over the radio. Before anyone could answer, the substance at the boundary began to move. Not spreading, not attacking. Rising. The gel-like material formed a column, roughly human-shaped, standing at the edge of the converted zone. It had no face, no features, but it was clearly meant to represent a person. And it extended one arm toward us in what could only be interpreted as an invitation. Grace looked at me. I looked at my gray leg, at the partial conversion I'd already undergone. Thought about what Dr. Kent had said, that the substance was learning about us, cataloging us. "Someone has to go first," I said quietly. "Jamie, no," Grace started. "My leg is already partially converted. If anyone's going to test whether this is safe, it should be me." "We don't authorize this," Colonel Rivera said. "The risk is too high." "Respectfully, sir, we're out of options. The substance is going to keep spreading whether we understand it or not. If there's a chance this is really communication, really an invitation rather than a threat, someone needs to accept and see what happens." I didn't wait for permission. I stepped forward toward the boundary, toward that waiting figure made of gel. Behind me, I heard Grace calling my name, heard Dr. Marsh saying something about protocols, heard the helicopter starting up for emergency extraction. but I kept walking. Reached the boundary. Extended my hand toward the gel figure. It met my hand with its own formless appendage. The moment we touched, everything changed. I didn't lose consciousness, but my perspective shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't just seeing from my own eyes. I was seeing from thousands of viewpoints simultaneously, from the depths of Lake Superior, from the surface of Lake Erie, from the converted forests and the partially transformed towns. I was seeing through the substance itself, experiencing its perception of the world. And it was beautiful. The substance wasn't mindless. It was ancient, vast, patient. It had slept for thousands of years at the bottom of the lakes, waiting, and when it woke, it saw a world that had changed, that had been damaged by pollution, by careless use, by disconnect between humans and nature. It wasn't trying to destroy, it was trying to heal. To create a system where everything was connected, where waste and damage couldn't occur because all parts of the system would feel the effects, where humans weren't separate from the ecosystem but part of it, able to sense the health of the water, the air, the soil as clearly as they sense their own bodies. The conversion wasn't death, it was transformation, enhancement. The frozen figures we'd seen weren't corpses, they were people in transition, their consciousness expanding to encompass the network while their bodies adapted to the new hybrid existence. And I could feel my choice in this moment. The substance wasn't forcing anything. It was asking, would I join? Would I become part of this new collective consciousness while retaining my individual identity? Would I help bridge the gap between humanity and the ancient intelligence of the lakes? I could say yes, or I could step back, return to my old life, my old limitations. The choice was genuinely mine. I stood at that threshold for what might have been seconds or hours. Time felt different in this state. I thought about Grace, about my family, about the world I'd known. Thought about the substance's vision of a connected future, where humans and nature weren't in opposition, but in partnership. Finally, I made my choice. I stepped back, broke contact with the gel figure. The expanded consciousness collapsed back into my own singular perspective, leaving me breathless and slightly dizzy. The gel figure didn't react with anger or disappointment. It simply lowered its arm and began to dissolve back into the surface. But before it disappeared completely, it shaped one more image in the substance at my feet. A circle, and inside it a question mark. I understood. It was asking when, not if. It believed I'd eventually join, eventually choose the connection it offered. And maybe it was right. But for now, I needed to remain human, remain separate, so I could help others make informed choices. I walked back to the team. Grace grabbed me, checked me over, relief and fear mixing in her expression. "What happened?" she demanded. "You were just standing there, not moving, for 10 minutes. 10 minutes? It had felt like seconds. I talked to it. It showed me what it wants, what it's offering. Over the next hour, I explained everything I'd experienced to the assembled team and to Colonel Rivera over the radio. The substance's perspective, its purpose, its offer. So, it's not hostile, Colonel Rivera said carefully. But it's also not going to stop spreading. No, sir. It will continue the conversion. But it's not forced. People can choose whether to join the network or not. Those who don't want to join can leave the converted zones, and the substance will let them go. And those who've already been partially converted, the frozen figures, they're in a transitional state. They can be revived, brought back to full conversion, or returned to human baseline. The substance was waiting to see what we'd choose before committing them either way. Dr. Marsh spoke up. This changes everything. If the substance is intelligent and willing to negotiate, we can establish boundaries. Create zones where humans can remain separate and zones where the network exists. And people can choose, Grace added. Make informed decisions about whether to join or stay human. The debate continued for hours, then days. Some people wanted to destroy the substance anyway, unwilling to trust something so alien. Others wanted to join immediately, seeing it as an evolutionary step forward. Most were somewhere in the middle, uncertain and afraid. But the substance was patient. It continued its slow spread. But when people chose to leave the converted zones, it let them go. When people chose to stay and join the network, it welcomed them. And gradually, a new understanding emerged. The Great Lakes had always been alive, always been aware. We'd just forgotten how to listen. Now they were speaking again, offering a choice: remain as we were, limited and separate, or join something larger, something that could heal the damage we'd done and create a balanced future. My partially converted leg never returned to normal, but it never got worse either. I carry the mark of that contact, that moment at the threshold. And sometimes when I'm near the water, I can feel the substance's presence, patient and vast, still offering its invitation, still waiting for my answer. The restricted zone had been closed for diving for 7 years. 7 years since the drowning. 7 years since they'd pulled Marcus Hale's body from 40 feet down, tangled in the old fishing nets that littered the bottom of this particular stretch of Lake Huron. The death had been ruled accidental, equipment failure, panic, a tragic combination of circumstances. But the Park Service had closed the area to diving anyway. Too dangerous, they said. Too many submerged hazards, too much risk. My name is Aiden Kirsch, and I'd been a ranger at this park for 3 years. Long enough to know the official story. Long enough to know there was more to it than that. The morning Olivia Thorne came into the ranger station, I was filling out maintenance reports, the kind of paperwork that makes you question your life choices. She looked shaken, her hiking boots still wet from the morning dew, her hands wrapped around a park map she'd folded and unfolded so many times the creases were starting to tear. "I need to report something," she said, "something I heard." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Olivia was a regular visitor, came out to hike the shoreline trails at least twice a month. Mid-30s, worked as a graphic designer in Detroit, used the park as an escape from the city. I'd chatted with her before, knew she was level-headed, not prone to exaggeration. "What happened?" I asked. "I was on the North Shore Trail, the section that runs along the bluffs above the restricted diving area." She paused, seemed to be choosing her words carefully. I heard breathing. Breathing. From underwater. I know how that sounds, but I heard it. Deep, rhythmic breathing, like someone taking slow, deliberate breaths. It was coming from below the surface. I leaned back in my chair, studied her face. She wasn't joking, wasn't trying to get attention. She genuinely believed she'd heard something. Could it have been waves? Water moving through rocks? Those can create sounds that seem like breathing. "I've been hiking that trail for 2 years, Aiden. I know what the water sounds like. This was different." She unfolded the map, pointed to a spot. "Right here, about 100 feet offshore from the trail. The water was calm this morning, barely any waves, but I could hear it clearly. Breathing, in and out, regular as a metronome." I marked the location on my own map. It was directly above the deepest part of the restricted zone, where the bottom dropped to almost 60 feet, where Marcus Hale had died. "How long did you hear it?" "Maybe 5 minutes. I stood there trying to figure out what it was, and it just kept going. Same rhythm, never varying. Then it stopped all at once. Just silence." "Did you see anything? Any disturbance on the water's surface?" "No, that's what was strange. The surface was smooth, undisturbed. but the sound was definitely coming from below. I made notes, told her I'd investigate. She seemed relieved to have reported it, like the act of telling someone else made it more real, validated her experience. After she left, I sat looking at the map, at the X I'd marked over the restricted zone. Sound traveled strangely in water. Air pockets and rock formations could create whistling or breathing-like noises. Schools of fish moving in unison could generate rhythmic sounds. There were explanations, rational ones, for what Olivia had heard. But something about it bothered me. The location. The timing. Today was October 17th. 7 years ago today, Marcus Hale had gone into that water and never come back up alive. I radioed my supervisor, reported Olivia's account. He listened without interrupting, then told me to check it out, make sure there weren't any unauthorized divers in the area. The restricted zone was still off limits, and we occasionally had to run off thrill seekers who ignored the signs. I grabbed my gear, wetsuit, dive tank, underwater flashlight, and loaded it into my truck. If there was something down there making noises, I needed to see it for myself. The drive to the North Shore access point took 20 minutes. The trail Olivia had mentioned was one of the more remote paths, not heavily used. I parked and hiked in, following the bluff line until I reached the spot she'd indicated on the map. The view was spectacular. The lake stretched out to the horizon, deep blue fading to lighter blue near the shore. The water was calm, just as Olivia had described. No boats visible, no other people on this section of trail, just me, the lake, and whatever had made those sounds. I stood at the edge of the bluff, listening. Birds called from the trees behind me. Wind rustled through the remaining leaves. Waves lapped gently at the rocky shore below. All normal sounds, no breathing. I waited for 10 minutes, straining to hear anything unusual. Nothing. Maybe whatever had caused it had moved on, or maybe the conditions that created the sound had changed. Water acoustics were unpredictable, but I was here, had my gear, and the restricted zone needed to be checked anyway. We were supposed to do periodic inspections of the area, make sure the warning buoys were still in place, document any changes to the underwater hazards. I'd been putting it off. Nobody liked diving the site where someone had died, but now seemed as good a time as any. I hiked down to the shore, found a small beach area where I could enter the water safely. The wetsuit was cold and clammy as I pulled it on, the neoprene sticking to my skin. I checked my equipment twice, made sure my radio was in a waterproof case clipped to my belt, tested my regulator. Everything working properly. The water was cold, even through the wetsuit. That particular October chill that reminded you winter was coming. I waded in until I was chest deep, put my regulator in my mouth, and submerged. The underwater world of Lake Huron was different from tropical diving. No bright coral, no colorful fish, just gray-green water, scattered rocks covered in algae, and the occasional lake trout drifting by. Visibility was maybe 20 feet on a good day, less if sediment got stirred up. I descended slowly, following the sloping bottom toward the restricted zone. At 30 feet, I could see the warning buoy's anchor lines stretching down into the darker water below. At 40 feet, I reached the area where Marcus Hale had died. The old fishing nets were still there, of course. Removing them would have been dangerous, risked stirring up who knows what from the bottom. They lay in a tangled mass, partially buried in silt, partially draped over rocks. A diver's nightmare. Easy to get caught in, hard to escape from in a panic. I checked the warning buoys, made mental notes about their condition. 2 needed replacement. 1 had significant algae growth that would need cleaning. Standard maintenance observations. Then I saw the vegetation. Near the deepest part of the restricted zone, where the bottom dropped to 60 feet, there was a patch of aquatic plants that didn't look right. They were too upright, too regular in their arrangement. Lake vegetation usually grew in random patterns, following sunlight and current. These looked almost planted, arranged. I swam closer, careful to avoid the old nets. As I approached, I realized the plants weren't just arranged, they were moving, not swaying in the current, which was minimal at this depth, moving deliberately, rhythmically, like they were being pushed by something beneath them. I circled the area looking for an explanation. Underground spring? Thermal vent? Both were possible in the Great Lakes, though not common. That's when I saw the bag. It was partially buried in the silt near the base of the strange vegetation. A black backpack, the kind hikers use, wedged between two rocks. The fabric looked intact, not deteriorated despite being underwater. I should have left it, should have marked the location and reported it, let a recovery team handle it. But curiosity got the better of me. I reached down, carefully pulled it free from the silt. The moment I touched it, the vegetation stopped moving. All at once, completely still, like someone had turned off a switch. I froze, holding the bag, my heart rate increasing. That shouldn't happen. Plants don't respond to being touched meters away. The stillness was absolute, unnatural. I waited, watching the plants. They remained motionless, not even drifting in the slight current. After a full minute, I decided I was imagining things, attributing cause and effect where there was only coincidence. I examined the bag. The exterior was covered in algae and silt, clearly had been down here for some time. But the zippers moved easily, not corroded. The fabric wasn't rotten or torn. It was like it had been submerged for a few days, not years. I checked my depth gauge, 58 feet, and my air supply still had plenty of time. I opened the main compartment of the bag. The interior was dry, not damp, not moist, bone dry, which was impossible. A bag that had been underwater for any length of time shouldn't be dry inside, even if it was supposedly waterproof. Water always found a way in eventually. Inside were a few items: a water bottle, empty, a granola bar wrapper, a small notebook with blank pages, and a wallet. I took the wallet out carefully, opened it. The leather was supple, not waterlogged. Inside was cash, dry bills not stuck together, some credit cards, and a driver's license. I shone my flashlight on the license, read the details. Name: Marcus Hale. Date of birth: April 3rd, 1984. Issue date: October 15th, 2016. The photo showed a man in his early 30s, dark hair, slight smile. The photo looked recent, clear, not faded or water damaged like it should be after 7 years underwater. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Today was October 17th, 2023. 7 years to the day since Marcus Hale had drowned in this exact location, and according to the license, it had been issued just 2 days before his death. The photo couldn't have been taken more than a week or two before he died. Yet it looked like it had been taken yesterday. The colors were vivid, the image sharp, no sign of age or water damage. I put the wallet back in the bag, zipped it closed, and started my ascent. I needed to surface, needed to report this, needed to think about what I'd found in air and light, not in the murky depths where nothing made sense. As I rose, I looked down one more time at the vegetation below. It was moving again, that same rhythmic, deliberate motion, and through my regulator, transmitted through the water, I heard it, breathing, deep, slow, steady breathing. In and out, the same rhythm Olivia had described. I ascended faster, not quite panicking, but close. Broke the surface near the beach where I'd entered, pulled off my mask, and gasped in the real air. The sun felt too bright, the normal world too surreal after what I'd experienced below. I got out of the water, stowed my gear, and carried the bag to my truck. It left a wet trail on the ground, water dripping from the fabric. But when I opened it again, the interior was still dry. The wallet, the notebook, the wrapper, all perfectly dry. I took photos of everything with my phone, documented the contents. The driver's license stared up at me from the bag. Marcus Hale's face frozen in that slight smile, looking like he'd posed for it yesterday instead of 7 years ago. Back at the ranger station, I laid everything out on my desk. My supervisor, Tom Bridger, came in to see what I'd found. He'd been working here when Marcus Hale had died, had been part of the recovery team that brought the body up. "Jesus," he said when he saw the license. "That's Marcus's bag. You recognize it?" He was wearing a backpack when he went in. Black, just like this one. We never found it. Assumed it had gotten washed away by current, buried in silt. Figured it was long gone. He picked up the wallet, stared at the photo. "This looks wrong. This photo looks new. The whole bag is wrong, Tom. It's been underwater for 7 years, but the interior is dry. The leather isn't waterlogged. The paper in the notebook isn't pulp. That's not possible. I know, but it's what I found." Tom set the wallet down carefully, like it might bite him. "Where exactly did you find it?" 58 feet, near that patch of vegetation at the deepest part of the restricted zone, right where Marcus went down. That area was searched thoroughly, multiple times. We had divers comb every inch looking for evidence for his equipment, for anything that could explain what happened. There was no bag. Maybe it was buried deeper, got uncovered by current over time. For 7 years it stays buried, then surfaces exactly on the anniversary of his death? Tom shook his head. "That's some coincidence. You think someone put it there, staged this? I don't know what I think. But we need to report this. To the police, to the medical examiner, to whoever handles cold cases." He looked at the photo again. "And we need to figure out how this photo looks so new." While Tom made calls, I examined the notebook. The pages were blank except for the last one. On it, written in pencil in small, neat handwriting, was a single sentence. "The lake remembers everything." I showed it to Tom when he got off the phone. He read it, his expression unreadable. "Marcus wrote that?" I asked. Could be his handwriting, hard to say for certain. He closed the notebook. "Police are sending someone out tomorrow. They want everything preserved as evidence. In the meantime, this all stays secure here. Tom, there's something else. When I found the bag, the vegetation around it was moving. Not swaying in current, moving deliberately. And when I touched the bag, it stopped. All at once. Underwater plants move, Aiden. That's what they do. Not like this. And I heard something down there, breathing. The same sound Olivia reported." Tom was quiet for a moment. "You were at 60 feet. You'd been down for what, 30 minutes? Nitrogen narcosis can cause auditory hallucinations. Make you see patterns that aren't there. I know what nitrogen narcosis feels like. This wasn't that." "Then what was it?" I didn't have an answer. We secured the evidence, locked it in the station's safe. Tom went home. I stayed, ostensibly to finish paperwork, but really because I couldn't stop thinking about that bag, that license, that breathing sound. At sunset, I drove back to the North Shore access point. Told myself I was just checking, making sure the area was secure, that no one had disturbed anything. But really, I needed to see if I'd hear it again. I hiked out to the bluff as the last light faded from the sky. The lake was darker now, almost black, reflecting the deep purple of the twilight sky. No wind, no waves, just that eerie stillness that sometimes settled over the Great Lakes at dusk. I stood at the edge, listening. At first, nothing. Just the silence of an autumn evening, the distant call of a loon, the rustle of something small in the underbrush behind me. Then I heard it, breathing. rising from the water below, clear and unmistakable. Slow, deep breaths, in and out, steady as a heartbeat, coming from the exact spot where I'd found the bag, where the strange vegetation grew, where Marcus Hale had died 7 years ago to the day. I pulled out my flashlight, shone it down at the water. The beam caught the surface, turned it silver, but revealed nothing unusual, just dark water, calm and still. But the breathing continued, patient, rhythmic, almost peaceful, like someone sleeping contentedly beneath the surface. I stood there until full dark, listening to that impossible sound. And as I finally turned to leave, I could have sworn I heard something else mixed in with the breathing. Words, too faint to make out, too distorted by water and distance, but definitely words, spoken in a voice that seemed to come from very deep down, from the place where the light didn't reach, the place where Marcus Hale had spent the last 7 years. I didn't sleep well that night. Kept thinking about the breathing, about Marcus Hale's face in that impossibly fresh photo, about the sentence written in the notebook. The lake remembers everything. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and drove back to the ranger station. Tom was already there, looking like he hadn't slept much either. On his desk was a file folder, thick with documents and photos. "Been pulling the old case files," he said. "Figured we should review what we know before the police get here." I poured coffee, sat down across from him. "What did we miss 7 years ago?" "Maybe nothing, maybe everything." He opened the folder, showed me the first document. A police report from October 17th, 2016. Marcus Hale, 32 years old, experienced diver, went down at 9:30 a.m. Solo dive, which was his first mistake. Weather was clear, water was calm. He was using his own equipment, all properly maintained. Planned to be down for 40 minutes, do some underwater photography of the old fishing nets. Why would anyone want to photograph trash on the lake bottom? He was working on some art project, something about human impact on natural spaces, the remnants we leave behind. He had a whole series planned: abandoned mines, forgotten cemeteries, sunken debris. Tom flipped to another page. His girlfriend reported him missing at noon when he didn't come back to their camp. We found his boat anchored over the deep section. His equipment bag was still in the boat, empty. Everything suggested he'd gone down as planned. But something went wrong. At 2 p.m., a fisherman spotted something in the water. We got divers down and found him at 55 feet, tangled in the nets. Autopsy said drowning. Equipment showed a malfunction in his buoyancy control device. Theory was he'd gotten caught in the nets while photographing them, panicked, couldn't get free, ran out of air. And the camera? Never found. Neither was his underwater housing, his lighting equipment, or his backup regulator. Just the body and his wetsuit. Tom closed the folder. His family accepted it as a tragic accident. We closed the area to diving to prevent it from happening again. Case closed. Except now we have his bag, the one that was never found, with contents that don't make sense. Tom pulled out his phone, showed me photos he'd taken last night. I measured everything: the wallet, the notebook, the wrapper. Then I went home and looked up what happens to paper, leather, and plastic after prolonged water immersion. Even in the best conditions, even in a supposedly waterproof bag, those materials should show degradation. Swelling, discoloration, structural breakdown. None of that is present. So either the bag wasn't underwater for 7 years, or something about the environment where it was stored prevented normal degradation. He set his phone down. "Aiden, I've been thinking about what you said, about the vegetation, about the breathing sound. I want to show you something." He pulled up another file on his computer. older records from before my time at the park. Incident reports dating back decades. He highlighted several entries. 1998, hiker reports hearing voices from underwater near the restricted zone. Investigation finds nothing. 2003, fisherman claims to see lights beneath the surface at night, same area, attributed to boat traffic reflections. 2007, dive team doing maintenance work reports equipment malfunctions and disorientation. Area is marked as having unusual underwater acoustics. 2012, park visitors complain about strange sounds coming from the water. Multiple witnesses, all describing breathing or sighing noises. I stared at the screen, Why wasn't this mentioned when Marcus Hale died? Because they were all written off as natural phenomena or misidentification. The investigation into Marcus's death focused on mechanical failure and human error, not on location anomalies. Tom leaned back. But what if the location matters? What if there's something about that specific area that's, different? Different how? I don't know, but I think we should look at the history. What was there before it became a restricted zone? Why is that section so deep when the surrounding areas are shallower? We spent the morning researching. Old geological surveys showed that the deep section was likely formed by glacial scouring thousands of years ago. It was a depression in the lake bottom, deeper than the surrounding terrain, that had filled with water and sediment over time. But there were also local legends. Tom found references in historical society archives to indigenous stories about that part of the lake. They called it the breathing place, a spot where the lake spirits would come up to touch the air. It was considered sacred, powerful, and dangerous. The tribes avoided fishing or swimming there. Lake spirits, Tom said. Pre-colonial mythology trying to explain natural phenomena. Or maybe they experienced the same things we're experiencing and had different words for it. Before Tom could respond, someone knocked on the door. A woman in her 40s wearing a police detective's badge introduced herself as Detective Sarah Morrison. She'd driven up from the regional office to review the evidence. We showed her everything. The bag, the wallet, the license with its too fresh photo, the notebook with its cryptic message. She listened, took notes, photographed everything with the same methodical attention Tom had. "You said the interior of the bag was dry?" she asked. "Completely dry. I checked it twice, once underwater and once on shore." She pulled on latex gloves, opened the bag again, felt inside. "It's dry now, too. That shouldn't be possible if it's been underwater for any length of time." She examined the wallet, studied the license. The photo does look remarkably well preserved, almost too well preserved. "You think it's not the original?" Tom asked. "I think we need to verify that. I'll take this back to our lab, have the materials analyzed. Carbon dating on the paper, chemical analysis of the inks, everything." She bagged the evidence carefully. "In the meantime, I need to ask, is there any possibility someone is pranking you, staging this discovery?" "Who would do that?" I asked. "And how would they know I'd dive that location today?" "Fair point. But 7 years is a long time for evidence to remain undiscovered, especially in an area that was heavily searched." She closed her evidence case. "I'll also want to interview the woman who reported hearing breathing sounds. Olivia Thorne, right?" I gave her Olivia's contact information. Detective Morrison left, promising to keep us updated. After she was gone, Tom and I sat in silence for a while. "You're going back down there, aren't you?" Tom finally said. "I have to. Something's not right about this whole thing." "I'll go with you. We shouldn't dive that area solo." We spent the afternoon preparing, double-checked all equipment, planned our dive profile, arranged for a surface support person to monitor us from shore. By 4 p.m. we were ready. The drive to the North Shore felt different this time. Heavier, like we were driving toward something significant. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the water as we suited up. "If anything feels wrong," Tom said, "any sign of equipment malfunction, disorientation, anything at all, we surface immediately. No heroics." Agreed. We entered the water together, descended slowly. Tom's presence was reassuring. Another set of eyes. Another consciousness in the alien environment of the deep lake. At 50 feet, we reached the area where I'd found the bag. The vegetation was there, just as I'd seen it before. But now, in the afternoon light filtering down through the water, I could see more detail. The plants weren't a native species. I'd been diving these waters for 3 years and had never seen this particular type of aquatic vegetation anywhere else in the lake. Tom saw it too. I watched his eyes widen behind his mask as he studied the plants. They were moving again, that same rhythmic, deliberate motion, like breathing. I pointed to the spot where the bag had been. Tom nodded, swam over, began examining the area more carefully. He brushed away silt, revealing more of the rock formation beneath. Then he stopped moving, stared at something, gestured urgently for me to come look. Carved into the rock, worn smooth by water and time but still visible, were marks. Not random scratches or natural erosion patterns. Deliberate marks, symbols, repeating in a line across the stone surface. They looked old. Very old. The kind of petroglyphs indigenous peoples had made centuries ago. But there was fresh scoring over them. Recent marks, bright against the aged stone. Someone had been down here recently, tracing over the old symbols. Tom pulled out a slate and underwater pencil, started sketching the symbols. I photographed them with my underwater camera. As we documented the markings, the vegetation around us intensified its movement. The plants were practically thrashing now, though there was no current, no obvious force making them move. Then I heard it again. The breathing, clearer this time, louder, coming from all around us. Not from one direction, from the water itself, from the rocks, from the sediment beneath us, like the whole area was a lung, expanding and contracting. Tom heard it too. I could see it in his body language, the way he'd gone rigid, the way his head was turning, trying to locate the source. The breathing grew louder, faster, no longer the slow, peaceful rhythm from before. This was agitated, distressed, and mixed with it now, clear and unmistakable, were words. Leave. A single word, spoken in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Spoken through water, through rock, through the vegetation that thrashed around us. Leave. Tom grabbed my arm, pointed up. I nodded. We started ascending, following proper procedure, controlling our ascent rate despite the instinct to bolt for the surface. At 30 feet, Tom stopped, pulled out his slate, wrote, "Did you hear that?" I wrote back, "Yes." Voice, saying, "Leave." He wrote, "Same voice?" "Same voice as what?" I wrote. He erased the slate, wrote carefully. As in the old reports, the voices from underwater, always saying leave or go back. We continued our ascent. Surfaced near the beach where our support person, a seasonal ranger named Kelly, was waiting. She helped us out of the water, immediately saw something was wrong. "What happened down there?" she asked. "We need to document everything," Tom said. "Photos, drawings, audio, if we picked up anything on our dive computer's recording functions, everything." Back at the ranger station, we downloaded the data from our computers. Most dive computers had basic audio recording capabilities meant to log ambient sound for post-dive analysis. We'd never had reason to use them before. But now we listened to the playback from both our computers. At 53 feet depth, 22 minutes into the dive, the audio picked up something. Not clear, distorted by water and the limitations of the recording equipment, but present. A breathing sound, rhythmic, deep, and then, barely audible, a voice. Leave. Tom played it 3 times, trying to convince himself it was an artifact of the recording. Interference, something explainable. But it was there, consistent across both of our computers. 2 independent recordings of the same impossible sound. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Voices don't travel underwater like that. The physics don't work. And even if they did, where would the voice be coming from? From whatever's down there. Whatever's been down there for a long time. Long enough for the indigenous peoples to make carvings about it. Long enough to accumulate legends and stories." "You're saying the legends are real? That there's actually something in the water?" "I'm saying Marcus Hale's bag was down there for 7 years, but it's not deteriorated. I'm saying his photo looks brand new. I'm saying we both heard a voice tell us to leave, and that voice has been heard by other people for decades." I pulled up the historical records Tom had found earlier. "And I'm saying that all of this centers on one specific location. Not the whole lake, just that one deep section where the petroglyphs are, where the strange vegetation grows, where Marcus Hale died." Tom was quiet for a long moment. "If you're right, if there is something down there, what is it? What could survive at that depth in fresh water for centuries? I don't know, but I think Marcus Hale found it. I think that's why he died. Not equipment failure, not panic. He found something, and it killed him. Or maybe," a voice said from the doorway, "he found something, and it kept him." We both turned. Olivia Thorne stood there, holding a folder of papers. She looked like she hadn't slept since I'd last seen her. Dark circles under her eyes. Her usual hiking confidence replaced with something that looked like fear. "I've been researching," she said, "ever since I heard that breathing sound. I went to the library, looked through old newspapers, talked to some of the old-timers who've lived around here their whole lives." She set the folder on Tom's desk. Marcus Hale wasn't the first person to die in that area. He was the 5th. We opened the folder. Inside were photocopied newspaper articles, old and yellowed, some dating back to the 1970s. 1973, Robert Nash drowned while diving, body recovered 3 days later. 1985, Jennifer Cross disappeared while swimming, body never found. 1994, Timothy and Sarah Vega, couple drowned in boating accident, bodies recovered after 2 weeks. 2016, Marcus Hale. 5 deaths, Olivia said. All in the same general area. All on October 17th. The room went cold. Tom and I looked at each other, then at the dates on the articles. Every single death had occurred on October 17th. Different years, spanning over 40 years, but always the same date. "That can't be coincidence," I said. "It's not," Olivia replied. I talked to an historian at the university. She said October 17th was significant to the indigenous peoples who lived here. It was the date of a ceremony, a ritual they performed at the breathing place, an offering to the spirits of the deep water to ensure safe passage through winter. "What kind of offering?" Tom asked. She didn't know specifics. The oral traditions were lost when the tribes were displaced, but the date remained important in local folklore. Old fishermen won't go out on October 17th. They say the lake claims a life that day, payment for the year past. "So we're dealing with what, a curse? Some supernatural force that kills people on a specific date?" Tom shook his head. "That's superstition." "Is it?" Olivia pulled out one more document. "This is a geological survey from 2010. It shows unusual magnetic readings in that area, temperature anomalies, and something they called unexplained acoustic phenomena. The survey team recommended further study, but it was never followed up on. I looked at the survey data. The magnetic readings showed a strong, localized field centered exactly where we'd found the petroglyphs. Temperature readings showed the water there was consistently 3 degrees warmer than the surrounding lake, suggesting a thermal vent or underground spring. And the acoustic phenomena description mentioned sounds consistent with human vocalization or similar waveform patterns. It's all connected, I said. The deaths, the sounds, the legends, the petroglyphs. Something is down there, has been down there for a very long time, and every October 17th it becomes active, takes someone. Then why didn't it take you? Olivia asked. You dove there today, October 17th. Why are you still here when 5 other people aren't? I didn't have an answer. Neither did Tom. We sat in the quiet ranger station, surrounded by evidence of something we couldn't explain, haunted by a question we couldn't answer. Why was I still alive? Detective Morrison called at 8 p.m. She sounded shaken, which immediately put me on edge. Detectives don't shake easily. We need to talk, she said, in person, tonight. She arrived 30 minutes later, carrying her evidence case and a laptop. Tom, Olivia, and I were still at the ranger station. When Morrison came in, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. The analysis came back on the driver's license, she said without preamble. The paper is 7 years old. The lamination is 7 years old. The inks are 7 years old. Carbon dating confirms it was created in 2016. Then the photo should be degraded, Tom said. That's what we thought. So we analyzed the photographic layer specifically. She opened her laptop, showed us microscopic images. The photo emulsion, the chemical layer that contains the image, is less than a week old. How? I asked. We don't know. The paper is 7 years old, but the image on it is new. She pulled up more images. And there's something else. We found trace biological material in the bag. Skin cells. Fresh skin cells. From who? Olivia asked. Marcus Hale, but they're not 7 years old. Based on cellular breakdown, these cells were shed within the last 72 hours. The room went silent. Tom walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. Marcus Hale is dead, he said quietly. I helped pull his body from that water. The body was identified through dental records, Morrison said. But according to this DNA evidence, Marcus Hale also shed skin cells into that bag sometime in the last 3 days. That's not possible, I said. None of this is possible, but the evidence doesn't lie. She closed her laptop. There's one more thing. We found traces of water in the bag's fabric. The water isn't from Lake Huron. What do you mean? Lake Huron has a specific chemical signature. The water in the bag has a completely different signature. Higher mineral content, unusual isotope ratios, like deep water, much deeper than 60 feet. We shared everything with Morrison, the petroglyphs, the voice recordings, the pattern of deaths on October 17th. She listened without interrupting. You're describing concentrated anomalous activity, she said. Centered on one specific location, active on one specific date. She looked at me. You said you heard a voice tell you to leave, but it didn't force you. It didn't prevent you from finding the bag. Why? I don't know. Maybe because you're not the one it wants. Every other person who entered that water on October 17th died or disappeared. But you didn't. Maybe... She pulled out her phone, made a call. This is Detective Morrison. I need missing persons reports for Lake Huron shoreline, October 15th through today. Priority flag for October 17th. We waited in oppressive silence. Morrison's phone buzzed. She listened, her expression growing darker. "Send me everything you have." She hung up. "There is a missing person. Claire Mendoza, age 28, reported missing this morning. Last seen yesterday afternoon, October 17th, at approximately 3 p.m. Location, North Shore Trail, near the bluffs above the restricted diving area." My stomach dropped. That's where Olivia heard the breathing. Search and rescue has been looking all day. She showed us an image. A young woman's face, smiling. This is Claire Mendoza. Something about the photo bothered me. Where was this taken? Morrison checked. Submitted by the family, taken last week at a family gathering. When I looked closer at the background, I saw dark blue water with a distinctive rocky shoreline. The north shore of Lake Huron. "This photo was taken at the park," I said. "Last week. She was already here, already near that location. Or maybe she was drawn here," Olivia said. "Like the others. Something about that date, that place, it pulls people in." Morrison coordinated with search and rescue. We spent the night preparing. At 5 a.m., we gathered at the North Shore access point. Full dive team, video recording equipment, medical team standing by. We entered the water as a team. At 50 feet, we reached the area where I'd found Marcus Hale's bag. The vegetation was gone. In its place was bare rock, the petroglyphs clearly visible, more extensive than I'd realized. Tom pointed to the center of the pattern. I swam over, looked down. There was an opening in the rock about 3 feet in diameter, dropping into darkness. From it came warmth. Before anyone could stop me, I descended into the opening. The shaft angled downward 20 feet, then opened into a cavern. My depth gauge showed 80 feet. The walls showed signs of tool work. This was man-made, submerged long ago. Along the walls were objects, personal items. A watch, glasses, a wedding ring, a wallet, a hair clip, a child's toy, and photos. Dozens of photos in underwater cases, arranged like a shrine. Robert Nash, Jennifer Cross, The Vegas, Marcus Hale, and one new photo at the front. Claire Mendoza's smiling face. Tom grabbed my shoulder. He'd followed me down. I pointed to the collection. Then we both saw it. In the back of the cavern, a shape. Human-sized, sitting upright. I swam closer. It was a body in a wetsuit, completely intact, looking fresh. The face was preserved, peaceful, eyes closed. It was Marcus Hale. Not the body recovered 7 years ago. This was Marcus Hale as he'd looked the day he died, untouched by decomposition. Tom pulled out his camera, started recording. We were 80 feet down, 20 feet under the lake bed itself. Movement caught my eye. From deeper in the cavern, something shifted. The vegetation. The same plants, growing here, roots disappearing into rock. Moving with that breathing rhythm. One plant extended a frond toward me, not threatening, almost gently. I heard the voice again. Through my regulator, through the air I was breathing. "She is safe. They are all safe. The lake remembers. The lake preserves." Tom heard it too, frozen in place. "We keep them," the voice continued. "The ones who come on the day of offering. They are not lost, they are remembered, perfectly, forever." "Where is Claire Mendoza?" I asked. The plants moved, parting like a curtain. Behind them I saw more bodies, 5 more figures, all perfectly preserved. Robert Nash, Jennifer Cross, Timothy and Sarah Vega, and in front, Claire Mendoza. She looked like she was sleeping. Her hiking clothes clean, her face serene. "The lake remembers everything," the voice said. "The people who loved it, who respected it, who offered themselves to its keeping. We preserve them as they were, perfect, unchanged, forever. This is wrong, I said. They didn't offer themselves. They were taken. They came to the breathing place on the day of offering. They came willingly, drawn by the old agreements. We only accept what is offered. Then let them go. Let Claire go. She is already part of us. The change has begun. The plants began extending across the entrance, not blocking us, but creating a barrier, a gentle warning. Tom grabbed my arm, pointed up. We ascended through the shaft, emerged into the main lake, began the ascent to the surface. We surfaced, and Morrison helped us out. We found them, Tom said. All of them. In an underwater chamber, preserved, including Claire Mendoza. She's alive? Morrison asked. I shook my head. She's there, but suspended. Not dead, not alive, just kept. Tom's video footage showed everything. The cavern, the preserved bodies, the vegetation, the voice. The evidence was undeniable and inexplicable. We need to mount a recovery operation, Morrison said. I don't think we can, Tom said. That chamber is 80 feet down, inside the lake bed itself. It shouldn't exist, and whatever's preserving those bodies, if we remove them, they shall probably decompose immediately. So, we just leave them? But I understood now. The lake wants acknowledgement. It wants people to remember the old agreements, to respect the breathing place. That's why the deaths happen, because we forgot. We closed the area, treated it as just another diving hazard instead of what it really is. What is it really? Olivia asked. A doorway, a connection between the surface world and something deeper, older. The indigenous peoples understood that. They made offerings, performed ceremonies. We stopped, so the lake started taking its own offerings. We argued for hours. In the end, we reached a compromise. The area would remain restricted, but reframed as a cultural heritage site. The petroglyphs would be protected. And every October 17th, a ceremony would be held. Not a human sacrifice, but an acknowledgement. Claire Mendoza's family was told she'd been found deceased in a diving accident, her body unable to be recovered. Marcus Hale's family was not told we'd found him again. The cavern remains there, 80 feet down, in a space that shouldn't exist. The bodies remain preserved, kept safe in the lake's memory. And every October 17th, we gather at the breathing place and make our offering, not of lives, but of respect, of remembrance, of understanding. I still dive the area sometimes, carefully avoiding October 17th. The vegetation has returned, growing in that rhythmic pattern. The breathing sounds continue, peaceful and steady, and occasionally I can hear the voice from the depths. The lake remembers everything. It does. It remembers the people who loved it. It remembers the promises that were made, and it keeps what it's given, perfectly preserved forever. Sometimes I wonder if I should have been more afraid in that cavern, but I wasn't. The presence in those waters isn't malevolent. It's just old, older than our understanding. It's the lake itself, conscious and aware, keeping its promises in the only way it knows how. On October 17th, I stay far from the breathing place. I've made my peace with what's down there. But I'm not ready to become part of its collection. Not yet. Maybe someday, when I'm old and tired, I'll walk down to that spot on the day of offering. I'll wade into the water. Let it preserve me as I am in that moment. Join the others in the lake's memory, perfect and unchanging. But not today. Today, I'm content to be the keeper of its secrets, the one who remembers while still living. The lake remembers everything. And now, so do I.